Chapter 48-77. Ling Long walked past Yiqing Luo and directly towards Feng Shi. "It's not impossible for me to let you out." Feng Shi looked at her warily. "What's your motive?" He naturally could tell. The identity of this young girl in front of him should be extremely distinguished in this place. Would she let him out? Ling Long walked nearer to Feng Shi and suddenly stretched out her hand. She was so shocked that she jumped backwards, out of Ling Long's range of reach. Ling Long's hand touched thin air. Her small, delicate face and big, bright eyes revealed a bit of interest. This unruly princess who called her attendant a slave just because she was slightly resisted. Now that she was rejected, she actually had no intention of getting angry. Instead, she laughed. "What's there to be nervous about? Do you think I will eat you up?" She retracted her hand and walked towards the vigilant Feng Shi. "Didn't you want to eat candied haws? I specially brought 2 skewers of candied haws for you." Her vision swept towards Yiqing Luo. Shao Qi passed the candied haws to him. Previously, Yiqing Luo heard a few secluded palaces, disciples going out to buy candied haws for Feng Shi. So, Ling Long brought her attendant over specially to deliver candied haws to Feng Shi. This unruly little princess, would she be so kind? Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she walked towards Feng Shi and passed the candied haws in her hand. Feng Shi's cold face was filled with alertness when she saw her approaching, and he even took a few steps back. But at the moment when Yiqing Luo passed the candied haws to him, Feng Shi seemed to have reacted as he raised his head abruptly and stared at Yiqing Luo, who was shrouded in a black robe. He stared at her with his big round eyes, as though he was trying to confirm something. Yiqing Luo looked at Feng Shi with some astonishment. This lad recognized her. She had disguised herself so well, and she was actually recognized. Feng Shi suddenly grabbed her arm with her small hand and moved her face closer, trying to see Su Qingsang's face under the black robe. Yiqing Luo hurriedly raised her hand and pressed on Feng Shi's shoulder. Under the black robe, a pair of long and narrow eyes were revealed as he blinked at Feng Shi. Then, he disappeared into the darkness. Yiqing Luo took 2 steps back and stood firmly behind Ling Long. Feng Shi stood rooted to the spot. Ling Long looked at Feng Shi in confusion. Then, she glanced sideways at the attendant behind her. "Shao Qi, what's going on?" "Your subordinate does not know." A deep and husky voice came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Ling Long's gaze moved back and forth between the 2 of them for a while. Then he fixed his gaze on Feng Shi. "Do you like my attendant?" The dumbfounded little person turned his head stiffly. Upon hearing Ling Long's words, Zhang Xian frowned. He subconsciously took a glance at Yiqing Luo. However, Feng Shi was the legitimate grandson of the Feng family. Very quickly, he adjusted his train of thought. Fairy Sister must have dressed up like this to save him. With Fairy Sister here, he didn't need to be afraid. Thinking like this, the vigilance on Feng Shi's face faded a little. She pretended not to know Yiqing Luo at all and asked directly, "Who are you? What do you want to do?" Ling Long didn't ask about Feng Shi's strange behavior when she saw her servant. She heard that the little dumpling was willing to respond to her. She was in a good mood and gave a rare smile. "I am Princess Ling Long here. Everyone has to listen to me, including you." The little girl raised her chin, apparently very complacent. Feng Shi looked at her suspiciously. "Really? Everyone listens to you?" Chapter 48-78. A poor person with no friends. Ling Long crossed her arms. "Why? Are you doubting me?" Feng Shi asked again. "Then you said you can let me out, is that true?" "Of course." Ling Long was delighted. "Who dares to disobey my order?" Feng Shi pursed her lips, seemingly considering. After a while, she raised her head. "What do you want me to do?" Ling Long walked straight over. Feng Shi took a step back. then took a look at where Yi Qing Luo was standing. Finally, he stood still and let Ling Long put her hand on his shoulder. Ling Long's smile widened. I don't need you to be a master. I just want you to play with me. Feng Shi. Play? Did he hear it wrong? This little princess actually wanted him to play with her? Play what? Play with his life? Ling Long looked at the lad's shocked expression and smiled calmly. Yes, this princess wants you to play with this princess. Feng Shi stood still. From the corner of his eyes, he glanced at the small hand on his shoulder. Fair and slender. It looked even smaller than his hand. He swallowed. How do you want me to play with you? Play with me like how you usually play, said Ling Long Feng. She was stunned, her face drooping. I don't have friends. Ling Long was stunned too. A look of disappointment appeared on her delicate and pretty little face. You are the same as this princess, a pitiful person without friends. She said the last 4 words very softly, almost inaudible, but it clearly floated into Feng Shi's ears. He seemed to understand something. This princess, who looked unruly and extremely confident and flamboyant, she looked beautiful on the surface, but the pain in her heart was no less than ordinary people. As the grandson of the Feng family, Feng Shi, he understood Ling Long's feelings very well. They were high up and unreachable. They wanted something. As long as they asked, someone would do it for them. But it wasn't them who worked hard for what they wanted. What was the point of such a life? No friends around him? No, there were some. It was just that those so-called friends were only getting close to him because of the warnings of the elders of the family. Actually, those people must hate him. She didn't want to play with him at all. He has no friends. Apart from Grandpa and Granny Phoenix, there was only boundless loneliness left in his life. Presumably, Princess Ling Long was probably the same as well. He was only 6 years old. However, his mentality was like that of an old man in his 70s. Feng, she blinked her big eyes and looked at Ling Long seriously. If you keep your word, I can be your friend. Ling Long's eyes lit up. You're the one who said it. Then we are friends now. Yi Qing Luo. He looked at the 2 children in the room with a dumbfounded expression. They shook hands and looked at each other. Then they played together. Yi Qing Luo. Since when did her Sisi become such a brat who easily messed around with others? What happened to being autistic? His mind was flooded with messages. Yi Qing Luo didn't show it on her face. Looking at the 2 little ones, they laughed and played around. She slowly walked to the door and stood still, acting as a backdrop. This was also to prevent anyone from coming in, interrupting her Sisi's honey trap to cultivate feelings with Ling Long. Chapter 48-79. Outside the door, they could faintly hear the voices of the secluded palace's disciples or attendants. Princess Ling Long seems to be smiling very happily. That wimpy brat is so hard to please. Why is he not making a fuss now? Why is Princess Ling Long looking for that wimpy brat? Why is it so lively inside? This is the first time we've heard Princess Ling Long smiling so happily. Ah, the secluded palace's disciples were also gossipy. Perhaps it's because Princess Ling Long had never seen anyone younger or similar in age to her. An attendant spoke calmly. Princess Ling Long heard that Elder Su had kidnapped a child, so she hurried over. That attendant paused slightly before continuing. She heard that the other party wanted to eat candied haws, so she brought her favorite candied haws along. The secluded palace's disciples nodded their heads in realization. That's true. His lordship had never allowed Princess Ling Long to interact with the outside world. Princess Ling Long indeed had never interacted with anyone other than us. No wonder Princess Ling Long took the initiative to look for her. Forget it. It's just 2 kids, and Xiao Qi is guarding over there, so nothing will happen. Let Princess Ling Long play with that wimpy brat for a while. Yi Qing Luo, heard those people's discussions outside the door as her slender eyes squinted slightly. Then he shifted his gaze to the smiling Linglong. She sighed. This Linglong should be the daughter of the mastermind behind the secluded palace? And the mastermind behind the secluded palace valued her a lot. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been nurtured into such a character. But keeping her in the secluded palace, not allowing her to come into contact with the outside world, this was like keeping a canary in a cage. Was it really purely because of care? Yi Qing Luo didn't quite understand this care. Look at the current Linglong. She was so adorable, and her smile was beautiful. Her mannerisms, speech were all spoiled and willful. Probably because of the circle she came into contact with. Only the secluded palace. And the people in the secluded palace were all respectful towards her. So much so, when Linglong saw that she was treating her differently from the others, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. Not only would she not be angry, she felt interesting. Let the two of them play for a while. Yi Qing Luo looked around unknowingly, scanning the surroundings. He memorized all the furnishings in the room. In his mind, he made a plan to leave. From time to time, people would walk past the door, but no one approached the door. Yi Qing Luo had not received any news from Zhu Wu Xan. About an hour later, the two little dumplings that were playing together were also tired. At this moment, they were sitting on the ground with their backs against each other, resting with their eyes closed. It had been a long time since the two of them had such happiness. Just as the peaceful and harmonious atmosphere was spreading intensely, suddenly he heard a low shout. "What are you guys doing here?" Elder Su. The greetings of the Dark Abyss Palace disciples came from outside. Elder Su strode over. "Where's Feng family's tiny tot?" "He's inside." The disciple of Dark Palace answered respectfully. "No, but just stay inside." Elder Su interrupted the disciple and waved his hand. He pushed the door open and walked into the room. Chapter 4880. Elder Su. Yi Qing Luo mimicked the greetings from the secluded palace's disciples outside. A black robe covered her entire body, leaving no gap. This Elder Su in front of her. He was the black-robed man who had appeared at the Feng family's courtyard and kidnapped Feng Shi. Elder Su took a glance at Yi Qing Luo. "Why are you here?" He didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo's reply. He walked straight in. When he saw the two of them sitting back to back, his expression changed. "Princess Linglong, what are you doing here?" This exclamation. It made the two who were tired of playing open their eyes. When Linglong saw Elder Su, a sliver of impatience surfaced on her face. "Elder Su, what are you shouting about? This is my territory. Do I need Elder Su's permission to go wherever I want?" Elder Su's expression froze. "Princess Linglong, I'm just concerned about you." "I'm fine. I don't need your concern." Linglong gave him a disdainful glance. Then she stretched her waist and stood up slowly. She also stood up and stared at Elder Su with vigilance. There was a hint of fear on her face. Linglong saw Shi's action and patted his shoulder. "I'm here. What are you afraid of?" "I will protect you." "Princess Linglong." Elder Su frowned and called out unhappily, "That's the person his lordship wants. This princess likes him." Linglong raised her head. "He belongs to this princess. This princess will ask Imperial Father for him." "Princess Linglong." Elder Su's expression sunk. "His lordship will not agree to your request. You are Princess Linglong. You shouldn't be involved with these people. Whether he agrees or not is up to Father. It has nothing to do with you." Linglong's expression turned cold. Or, "Elder Su thinks that you can replace Father's thoughts." "I don't dare." When Elder Su heard that, his expression changed as he lowered his head. If he were to wear this high hat on his head, if it reached his lordship's ears, that was regardless of whether he had ulterior motives. Even his lordship would not tolerate him. Ling Long snorted coldly, extremely arrogant. Then she raised her chin and asked arrogantly, "What are you doing here? Did father ask you to bring him over?" No. The veins on Elder Sue's forehead bulged, but he managed to suppress them. "I just came to check on his condition." Ling Long raised her brows. "Since Lord Father doesn't intend to summon Cece, then let Cece follow this princess first." "Princess Ling Long, you mustn't do that." Elder Sue glanced at Feng Shi and said, "His identity is rather special. He's under the strict supervision of the Lord, so there's no room for any mistakes." "You mean to say something will happen to him if he hangs around this princess?" Ling Long sneered. Her exquisite and beautiful face was filled with arrogance. "In your eyes, this princess is a troublemaker? This subordinate dares not think so." Elder Sue gritted his teeth as he spoke. The expression on his face was frozen. However, the words that came out of his mouth seemed to be for her sake. "This subordinate is just worried that that boy is too cunning and will deceive you, your highness, and hurt your heart. But I like him." Ling Long had no intention of compromising. As a result, in the end, Elder Sue was the only one who compromised. After all, this was the princess that the Lord doted on the most. Elder Sue agreed to let Feng Shi follow Ling Long. However, it was only limited to this underground palace. Chapter 4881. Elder Sue took a step back. Ling Long naturally took a step back as well. In this underground palace, so be it. Anyway, no matter where it was, as long as she could play with Cece, it was fine. Ling Long didn't care, but Feng Shi's face turned pale. "Princess Ling Long, you promised me." She promised to let him go. Why did she agree to Elder Sue's words now? The range of activity was limited to this underground palace? What was the difference between locking him up? Ling Long held Feng Shi's hand and walked out of the room. The lights in the huge underground palace weren't bright, but not dark either. The candles hung on the walls lengthened their shadows. Ling Long asked with a serious expression, "Aren't you out now?" "Feng Shi, you tricked me?" "I like you. Why would I trick you?" Ling Long frowned. "Didn't I do what I promised you?" Let him go. Now he had indeed left the house where he was being held captive. These words, there was nothing wrong with it. Feng Shi pursed her lips, unwilling to speak. Elder Sue took a look at Feng Shi and then at the arrogant princess, who didn't fly into a rage like usual, even though Feng Shi had given him a cold shoulder. He retracted his gaze and looked at the other disciples. "Watch carefully. If you lose sight of him, all of you will die." Yes, the disciples of the Nether Palace were trembling in fear as they replied respectfully. Elder Sue flicked his sleeves and left. Ling Long grabbed Feng Shi's hand. "Let's go. I'll bring you to my room to play. There are many fun things inside." Before she could finish her words, Feng Shi swung her hand and slapped Ling Long's hand away. Her little face was filled with anger. "I don't want to play with you." Without any warning, Ling Long was slapped away and staggered back a step. Yi Qing Luo supported her from behind in time. She was a little girl who had been pampered since young. Just one slap. A large red patch appeared on Ling Long's fair and tender skin. It looked extremely shocking. The expressions of the palace of gloomy darkness disciples changed, and they rushed to Ling Long. "How dare you? How dare you hurt Princess Ling Long?" Immediately, other disciples of the palace of darkness lifted Feng Shi up, just as he was about to slap her. "Stop!" Ling Long's expression turned slightly cold. She reprimanded and lashed her whip at the disciple who slapped her. She said with a cold face, "Did I ask you to do it? Get lost." The Darkness Palace disciple who was whipped and the other disciples all took 2 steps back and lowered their heads in apology. Ling Long snorted coldly and looked back at Feng Shi. She stuffed the whip into Yi Qing Luo's hand and strode over to Feng Shi. "Why are you angry with me?" She was arrogant and unreasonable when facing the disciples of the Dark Palace. When he looked at Feng Shi, there was nothing left. She patiently continued, I like you, but that doesn't mean you can trample on my good intentions. Feng, she gritted her teeth. She had tricked him with words. Why did it sound like it was his fault? Just as he was about to say something, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the black-robed young lady behind Linglong. She shook her head at him. The words in Feng Shi's mouth stopped. She lowered her head and said in a muffled voice, I want to leave this place. Linglong walked closer to him. I want to leave too. Aren't you a princess? Why can't you leave? Feng Shi asked. Linglong said, other than leaving the restricted area that my father has set for me, I can't go anywhere else. Chapter 4882. You're my first friend, then you're such a pitiful princess. Feng Shi was stunned. She raised her eyes and saw the melancholy in Linglong's eyes. All of the anger he felt just now had dissipated in an instant. Linglong chuckled, but that smile didn't reach her eyes and couldn't disperse the sadness in her eyes. Yes, I have the respect and power of a princess, so I have to bear the price of enjoying the treatment of a princess. At this moment, she had already addressed herself as I, not this princess. Here, besides father, no one dares to criticize or disobey me. But similarly, what I have to pay is my freedom. Linglong slowly held Feng Shi's little hand. You're my first friend. Feng Shi was still in a daze. The hand that held his was very warm, like the sun shining on him warmly. Feng Shi's heart skipped a beat as her clear eyes stared unblinkingly at the little girl in front of her. After some time, he held Linglong's hand back. You're my first friend too. Linglong's brows relaxed. That pair of beautiful eyes curved into a beautiful arc. So, other than letting you leave this place, I can promise you anything you want. As she said that, she bent down slightly and got close to Feng Shi's ear. I will beg father to let you off. Feng Shi was still in a daze when Linglong brought her to this underground palace, to her room. The princess's room was much more luxurious and exquisite than the room where Feng Shi was locked up, and it was filled with children's favorite toys, sweets, and snacks. She could tell Linglong was indeed a doted palace mistress. She sent the two little dumplings back to their room. Yiqing Luo was about to step into the room. Her wrist was pulled. Xiaoqi, what are you doing? Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks, looking at the person who was pulling her back in a daze. It was Linglong's attendant. Yiqing Luo deliberated on how to answer the attendant. She heard him continue, no one is allowed to enter Princess Linglong's room. While Princess Linglong is in a good mood, don't let her find out. Yiqing Luo silently retracted her leg. Princess Linglong sure has a lot of problems. She pursed her pink lips and quickly scanned Linglong's room through the black robe. If Feng Shi stayed here, there shouldn't be any danger. She left the room and closed the door. Outside the door, the group of attendants finally heaved a sigh of relief. They leaned against the wall and sat unsteadily. Princess Linglong seems to be in a good mood today. As long as we serve her carefully, we should be able to survive until tomorrow's shift. That brat just now scared me to death. He actually dared to reject Princess Linglong. Luckily, Princess Linglong is quite fond of that little brat. Otherwise, we will all be implicated. After today, we'll be able to change shifts soon. In front of others, the servants were cold and aloof, like orderly puppets. At this moment, they were all grumbling softly. Yiqing Luo casually found a place to sit down as she listened to the attendants' discussions. He roughly understood just how bad was Linglong's reputation. The servants described her as an evil woman who had crawled out of hell. Unruly, willful, cruel, and bloodthirsty, killing without batting an eyelid. Yiqing Luo listened with a face of suspicion. Although the cute and pretty little princess was a little unreasonable, she was still a little arrogant. But it was not to the extent using vicious words like killing people like flax, cruel and bloodthirsty to describe her. Chapter 48-83. How bad was Princess Linglong's reputation? Yi Qing Luo also found out. They were Princess Linglong's servants, and they worked in shifts. About 20 over people, 6 people would be chosen daily to take care of Princess Linglong. Every time the servants took care of Princess Linglong, there was a risk of losing their lives. Their lives depended on Princess Linglong's mood, so they took care of Princess Linglong. They were all on tenterhooks, afraid that they would lose their lives. The few of them were ridiculing. Suddenly one of the servants looked at Yi Qing Luo. "Number 7, why are you so quiet today? Aren't you the one who?" said the most powerful Yi Qing Luo, who was called out. She only wanted to be a quiet background. He was the 7th son of the emperor. Couldn't she know her place earlier? How was she going to maintain her image as the 7th servant? She felt like she was going to fall off the horse. Yi Qing Luo's heart roared as her brain worked quickly, suppressing her voice. Today, Princess Linglong seems to be very happy. That's not true. The servant waved his hand. This is the first time Princess Linglong interacted with a wimpy kid from the outside world. Princess Linglong should have treated him as her little toy. From what I see, Princess Linglong got a new toy and is so happy that she can't bear to part with it. Number 7. Someone came over and sized up Yi Qing Luo suspiciously. Princess Linglong is happy with a new toy. What has it got to do with you not grumbling or being afraid? Even though they were separated by a black robe, Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the other party's gaze, examining her. Yi Qing Luo was extremely calm as her voice was deep. "Because I am different from what you think." She waved away that person's hand and looked towards the tightly shut door. Princess Linglong today, when she smiles, she looks very beautiful. Servants. So looks were justice? Because Princess Linglong smiled beautifully, so she couldn't even bear to grumble? Suddenly, squeak! The room door was opened. A young girl dressed in an exquisite long dress stood at the door. Princess Linglong. The servants were so shocked that they jumped up from the ground and hurriedly stood up straight respectfully. Linglong's beautiful big eyes stared straight at Yi Qing Luo, unable to tell the emotions within. The attendants held their breaths. He was afraid that if he was not careful, his life would be taken by this unruly and headstrong princess. Linglong's vision stared at Yi Qing Luo for some time. "You said?" "This princess is very beautiful." "Princess Linglong, this is what she said. It has nothing to do with us." The attendants immediately voiced out to clarify their relationship. However, Linglong did not even bother to look at them. He only stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo as he repeated his question. "Say it one more time." Yi Qing Luo's slightly drooping head slowly lifted up. Through the black robe, Yi Qing Luo could see the sparkling light in the young and beautiful little princess's eyes. It was as dazzling as a luminous pearl. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips moved as she said word by word, "If Princess smiles more often, you will definitely be more beautiful." As soon as he finished speaking, the attendants behind him all gasped in shock. He was quite frightened. This old 7th couldn't be crazy, right? She actually raised her opinion to Princess Linglong. She was going to cause them to die. However, they trembled as they waited for a long time. They didn't see Princess Linglong getting angry. On the contrary, Princess Linglong turned around and walked into the room. She even said, Chapter 48-84. She even said, "You come in with me." Looking at Linglong's departing figure, the few attendants behind her lowered their voices. "You're in trouble for being targeted by Princess Linglong." "All right, stop talking. If Princess Linglong hears you, you'll be called in too." "Number 7, I wish you good luck." Yi Qing Luo entered Linglong's room while the few of them were discussing. The door had just closed. Linglong's voice was heard. During this period of time, You have to report to me every day. Which meant that she, little 7, could not participate in the shift system. Yi Qing Luo naturally had no objections. When she heard that there was a shift system, she had been thinking about how she could avoid it. Before she could think of a foolproof way to bring Feng Shi out from the underground palace of the secluded palace, it was much safer to stay by Linglong's side, towards the habits of these attendants in the secluded palace. She didn't know if she was really put on shift, together with a group of familiar attendants. The possibility of her being exposed was too high. Still staying by Linglong's side. Presumably, Linglong had no idea what kind of character her own attendant had. Moreover, children were easier to fool. Yi Qing Luo was satisfied, yes. Time passed by quickly. A day had passed. Feng Shi stayed in Linglong's room directly. Yi Qing Luo, the attendant who was appointed to serve her personally, also stayed in Linglong's room and didn't leave. The relationship between the two little dumplings, after a day of interaction, they had really opened their hearts. They treated each other as their confidants. It was probably because Yi Qing Luo had protected Linglong in an absolutely protective manner. Or perhaps Feng Shi liked her more. Linglong's attitude towards her was considered quite good. When the two of them were fooling around, or when the other attendants served exquisite delicacies, they were all invited to have their meals together. That was for a servant. In the secluded palace, it was the highest honor. The others originally thought that this number 7 was going to be dismembered by Princess Linglong, but they had not expected, in just a short few hours, number 7 foot had already gained Princess Linglong's recognition. He knew that. Princess Linglong liked it when people complimented her. They were praising him too much. It was too late for regrets. But there was no chance for regret. On the round mahogany table, the two little dumplings sat side by side, obediently eating the food in their bowls. Yi Qing Luo sat beside Feng Shi, while serving the two little dumplings. "Cece, do you like the food here?" Linglong asked as she bit her wooden chopsticks and watched Feng Shi eat obediently without saying a word. Feng Shi put down her chopsticks and wiped her mouth. Then she looked at Linglong and said, "Delicious. If Cece likes it, I'll get the kitchen to make it for you every day." Linglong smiled. Feng Shi blinked her big eyes and then lowered her head slightly. "But I won't be able to eat it soon. As long as this princess is around, you can eat whatever you want." Linglong's vision shot towards Yi Qing Luo. "Remember what Cece wants to eat. Go prepare it." Princess Linglong. Yi Qing Luo also put down her chopsticks. "Young Master Feng should not be because he wants to eat anything." She didn't beat around the bush as she continued. "Young Master Feng is a hostage that Master specially instructed Elder Su to lock up here. A day has already passed, and the Lord should soon send news back and have someone take young Master Feng away." Chapter 4885. That's why young Master Feng feels that he won't be able to eat it soon. After a day of interaction, Yi Qing Luo had some understanding towards this unruly little princess. You and her went around in circles. She absolutely couldn't understand the twists and turns. She couldn't figure out what you were hinting at. She could only point out directly. Linglong then understood. The moment she said that, the entire room fell into silence. Linglong's hand, which was holding the wooden chopsticks, froze as she slammed it heavily on the table. I will not let father take Cece away." Yi Qing Luo met Linglong's sullen gaze as she spoke in a considerate tone. "Princess Linglong, I don't have any other intentions. I just want to remind you. In case Master wants to take young Master Feng away, and Princess Linglong can't accept it, thus hurting the harmony between you two. Even if you tell me now, I can't accept it." Linglong's exquisite and beautiful face turned serious as she looked at Feng Shi seriously. "I want Cece to stay by my side, to be my playmate for life." Princess Linglong's idea is good. Yi Qing Luo's voice gradually became gentle. But, Princess Linglong, have you ever thought? Under the black robe, the young lady's gaze was very gentle. Is young Master Feng willing? Linglong was just about to reply confidently. How would he dare to not comply with my request? I like him so much, he will definitely like me too. What's there to be unwilling about? But when she saw Feng, she slightly gloomy eyes. She swallowed back the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She spat out 3 words, but she didn't say anything else. That's right. How would Cece agree to accompany her in this dark place for life? She couldn't force anyone, but she couldn't force herself to be her first friend, although she had never made friends before. But she also knew that friends couldn't be forced. Yi Qing Luo looked at their silent expressions as she eased the atmosphere. Princess Linglong, do you know the reason why Master kidnapped young Master Feng? If you know the reason, perhaps you can let young Master Feng stay by your side safe and sound. I don't know. Linglong hung her head in defeat. My father has never allowed me to ask about him. Yi Qing Luo consoled him. Young Master Feng is, after all, the Feng family's direct grandson, so Master shouldn't be too overboard. No, I'm going to find my father. Linglong suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Cece is my friend. I can't let royal father hurt Cece. Saying that, she didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo's reply or Feng Shi's reaction. He hurriedly walked out of the door. That was called valiant and high-spirited. Yi Qing Luo. This little princess was really a doer. He was in a hurry. Princess Linglong, where are you going? Princess Linglong, Princess Linglong. Outside the door, the servants called out. Linglong walked very quickly. He completely ignored them. The attendants and the disciples of the palace of gloomy darkness who were guarding at the side found it strange. He pushed open the door. He saw Yi Qing Luo dressed in a black robe, standing beside the mahogany table. Feng Shi, on the other hand, was sitting in front of a table full of delicacies, swinging her little feet. Number 7. The attendants shouted outside the door. Yi Qing Luo turned around and said calmly, Princess Linglong went to look for Master and ordered me to look after young Master Feng. This excuse, there was no flaw. The attendants didn't ask any further. They closed the door again and stood guard outside. Fairy sister. There were no outsiders around. Feng, she immediately jumped down from the chair and hugged Yi Qing Luo's leg. Chapter 4886. Yi Qing Luo bent over and carried Feng Shi in her arms. Sizing him up, Are you hurt anywhere? Feng Shi shook his head. Even if they locked me up, they wouldn't dare to touch me. Yi Qing Luo poked his forehead. I heard that you've created quite a ruckus here. In the house where he was locked up, everything was smashed to smithereens. It even made those secluded palaces' disciples fly into a rage. They even compromised and went out to buy candied haws. Feng, she was probably the only one who could enjoy such treatment, but the attitude of the secluded palace's disciples. On the contrary, it made Yi Qing Luo feel uneasy. This was enough to tell. The mastermind of the secluded palace needed Feng Shi. What did the mastermind of the secluded palace want to do to Feng Shi? What did he need Feng Shi to do? Yi Qing Luo suppressed the suspicions in her heart as she rubbed Feng Shi's head. Sister is here, I'll bring you out soon. She paused and lowered her voice. Princess Linglong likes you very much. If you keep following Princess Linglong, she can protect you. When she mentioned Linglong, the smile on the little man's face gradually faded. He pursed his lips as he drooped his head. His forehead rested on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. His voice sounded a little gloomy. Fairy sister, I don't want to lie to her. Yi Qing Luo knew that the her he was referring to was Linglong. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. Cece also likes Princess Linglong? Amen. Feng Shi nodded without hesitation. Princess Linglong treats me sincerely, I don't want to lie to her. All right. Yi Ching Luo had no intention to refute as she gently rubbed the little dumpling's head. Cece, do whatever you want to do. Feng, she suddenly raised his head. Her black and white eyes were sparkling. He grinned as his eyes curved. Amen. All the uneasiness and unhappiness in the bottom of his heart had completely dissipated. But, Cece, we have to leave this place. Yi Ching Luo's vision looked towards the tightly shut door. Princess Linglong isn't around, and the attendants and secluded palace's disciples outside all think that I'm guarding you. This is our best chance to leave. She reached out and pinched Feng Shi's nose. Cece, are you leaving? The smile on Feng Shi's face, which had just appeared, slowly faded away. He looked at Yi Ching Luo in a daze. Then he glanced at the room that was filled with Linglong's aura. He had just made up his mind to reveal his identity, and Yi Ching Luo's identity to Linglong. I want to tell her. He also sincerely wanted to be friends with her. I want to tell her. He wanted to take her out of this dark place and let her see other colors in the world. But he couldn't, even if he didn't know what kind of place this underground palace was. But it was also clear. This place was fraught with danger. Fairy's sister came here to save him. He was definitely taking a huge risk. Now was the best chance to leave. I missed it. I'm afraid. It's not just him who can't leave this place. Even Fairy's sister would be implicated by him. He could not be so selfish. Although he was small, his thoughts were extremely mature. In the blink of an eye, he used a clear and resolute gaze to look at her. Fairy sister, I'll leave with you. He paused slightly, but before this, I want to tell her that I really treat her as my friend. Yi Ching Luo touched his head. Go on. This was the little dumpling's first friend. Chapter 4887. Yi Ching Luo couldn't deprive Feng Shi of the joy of making her first friend. And Linglong, that girl, wasn't a bad person. To Linglong, Xiao Tuanzi was also her first friend. If she could, Yi Ching Luo quite liked that the two of them could play together. It would be best if Feng Shi could change Linglong's spoiled and willful temper. Feng Shi took out a piece of paper and wrote down what he wanted to tell Linglong seriously. Every stroke was written in an extremely serious manner, until he checked it 3 times. He then put down the pen. He placed the paper that was filled with words under Linglong's pillow. Fairy sister, I'm done. Feng Shi ran back to Yi Ching Luo. Yi Ching Luo patted his little shoulder. Have you decided? Feng Shi nodded vigorously. The little girl's black and white eyes were filled with seriousness and solemnity. I know that Grandpa is worried about me, and I also know that Fairy sister took a huge risk to save me. I can't be willful and only think about myself. He wanted to accompany his first friend, to accompany the friend who was alone other than him. But now it wasn't the time. He couldn't because of the importance he attached to friendship, regardless of the others. He believed Princess Linglong would understand him. Yi Ching Luo carried her with one hand. My little Cece, you've really grown up. She pinched the little boy's face. I'll bring you out now. Hold on tight to me. No matter what happens, don't make a sound. Can you do that? Feng Shi nodded vigorously. Her little hand circled Yi Ching Luo's neck. Cece will not be a burden to Fairy sister. Be good. Yi Ching Luo carried Feng Shi and returned to the other side of the room. The Palace of Darkness really loved Linglong to the core. In this dungeon, which should be for the Jiang family's aristocrats, there was an extremely luxurious room, specially built. Outside the window on the other side of Linglong's room was a flower bed, under the bright, luminous pearl. Those transplanted flowers were in full bloom, bright purple and red, extremely beautiful. Behind the flower bed there was a towering wall. Yi Ching Luo brought Feng Shi over the garden and climbed over the wall. When she looked down, below them was a pitch-black tunnel. He seemed to have returned to the tunnel that he had passed through before coming here. The other end of Linglong's room was actually connected to this passage. If he followed the path, He would be able to leave the underground palace. She could leave the underground palace now. However, what about Zhu Wuxin? Hiding a servant for such a long time. With Zhu Wuxin's skills, he shouldn't be discovered by those people from Dark Nether Palace. Even if they found out, he could also escape. However, now she had left with Feng Shi. Would Zhu Wuxin think that she was in this underground palace and was looking for her everywhere? When Yiqing Luo thought of this, her brows creased tightly into a bundle. How troublesome. Forget it. I'll send Feng Shi out first. Yiqing Luo took a look at the tunnel below. He was about to jump down. Suddenly, he heard a panicked roar from behind him. Oh no! The little brat from the Feng family is gone. And seventh. What happened? Quick! Hurry up and find him. The footsteps of the Dark Abyss Palace disciples and servants got closer. Oh no, they had been discovered. How could it be so fast? Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed tightly as she lowered her head to look at the little one in her arms. Cece, hold on tight. Chapter 4888. Feng, she responded with an N. Yiqing Luo leaped up and landed lightly on the ground. Following that, she walked along the tunnel. It was pitch black inside the tunnel. She couldn't see the surrounding path. Yiqing Luo walked a few steps and sensed. Not right. When she came here, she specially constructed a map of the tunnel's topography in her mind as she walked. If she walked through it again, she would definitely feel a sense of familiarity. But the tunnel she was walking on now, the feeling was totally different. This tunnel wasn't the tunnel to leave the underworld. Yiqing Luo suddenly recalled the fork in the road when she came over. Could it be the tunnel she was walking on now? Was it another fork in the road? But now it was basically impossible for her to turn back. The Palace of Darkness's disciples would not give her this chance. She could only move forward. Yiqing Luo walked forward quickly. While she was moving forward quickly, she could clearly hear footsteps from all directions and the sound of the Palace of Darkness's disciples exchanging information. In front, she could faintly see a bit of light. Yiqing Luo quietly got closer. To his surprise, he realized that the passageway led to a huge courtyard. In this cold and gloomy underground cave, there was an inexplicable strange feeling. This place. What place was this? In this underground palace. Why did they have to specially build such a courtyard that required so much time, effort, and money? Who was the person who stayed in this courtyard? Yiqing Luo recalled that Ling Long seemed to be the one who came from this tunnel. Could it be? The person in the courtyard was the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness? Yiqing Luo's eyes wavered slightly. This side. Do you want to go take a look? That's a forbidden area. But we searched the entire underground palace and didn't find Feng family's brat and number 7. The disciples guarding the entrance of the underground prison didn't see the both of them leaving. Perhaps they are hiding here. Ah. Behind them, the Palace of Darkness's disciples' voices were getting closer. They were still feeling uneasy, hesitating if they should come over to search. Yiqing Luo heard their discussion as her heart started to pound. This was a forbidden area. There was actually a forbidden area in the Palace of Darkness's base. What kind of secret or treasure was hidden here? Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows slightly, held Feng Shi tightly, and jumped into the courtyard. Forbidden areas were the best places to hide. It was the moment she jumped into the courtyard. Footsteps could be heard from outside the courtyard. The disciples of Gloomy Palace caught up. Are we going in? I don't think so. What if the person is really hiding inside? Elder Su said that if we lose sight of him, all of us will have to die with him. Either way, I'll die. Let's go in. The disciples of Darkness Palace chattered for a long time outside the courtyard. In the end, he decided enter Yiqing Luo's current position. It was very close to the courtyard gate. As long as those people came in, she would definitely be discovered. but the place where she was standing now was a little awkward. The ground was covered with a thick layer of withered yellow leaves. All she had to do was lift her foot slightly and put it down. The rustling of leaves was extremely obvious. When those people heard it, they would be able to detect her position. The Palace of Darkness's disciples got closer to the courtyard gate bit by bit. From the footsteps, there were about 10 over of them. Yi Qing Luo's heart started to race. The courtyard gate, slowly, was pushed open. Chapter 4889. 10 over figures walked into the courtyard uneasily. They just needed to take another 2 steps forward. Just a side glance, and there was a possibility. See, her. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers pressed on Feng Shi's head. She was silently guessing in her heart whether there would be a chance for Feng Shi to escape later. Just as the dozen or so figures entered the courtyard and were about to look around, her body suddenly felt light. Her mouth was covered by someone. She was dragged onto the big tree branch behind her. The leaves rustled. This attracted the attention of the secluded palace's disciples. Under the dim illumination of the luminous pearl, the leaves swayed along with the chilly wind. The rustling sound of the leaves rubbing against each other could be heard. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. It's just the wind, nothing. Ah, what nonsense. Yi Qing Luo's heart was roaring like a dragon. Her mouth was covered, and she couldn't even make a sound. The secluded palace's disciples were still scurrying around. She didn't dare to struggle or move, until the secluded palace's disciples went around the courtyard and searched one round before leaving. Yi Qing Luo then yanked away the hand covering her mouth. Zhu Wu Xian, why are you here? She was entirely shrouded in a black robe. Earlier, when she was dragged up the tree and covering her mouth, they were all separated by a black robe, but it still couldn't be concealed. A faint plum fragrance. It was a clear and cold aura unique to Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxian held Feng Shi steadily with one hand as he slowly retracted the other. Coincidence? Do you think I'll believe that? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes, hiding an attendant. You've already disappeared, and now you ran to this secluded area of the secluded palace. Yi Qing Luo's slender eyes rose slightly as she tilted her head slightly. On the surface, you specially brought me to the secluded palace's base to save someone. In actual fact, you have your own motive. Zhu Wuxian's thin lips moved, as though he wanted to say something. Under the dim and hazy light, that pair of icy cold, deep eyes were tainted with a thin sense of disappointment. But in the end, he didn't say anything, as though he silently agreed with Yi Qing Luo's words. Yi Qing Luo leapt down from the tree and gathered the loose black robe around her. I'm not too concerned about what your motive is. I just want to know, are you going to leave this base of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness? You can't leave now. Zhu Wuxian's voice was very calm. The disciples of Gloomy Palace will seal all the passages. Once you show yourself, you will fall into their trap. He paused for a moment before continuing. You should know very well that the Palace of Gloomy Shadows is best at all kinds of evil forbidden arts. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers clenched. Then we're just going to sit here and wait for death. Zhu Wuxin was silent for a moment. Let's hide here for now. When their guard loosens, I'll go lure them away. This was a forbidden area. The disciples of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness came around. He did not dare to do it a second time. It was indeed a relatively safe place at the moment. But there must be a reason why the forbidden grounds are called as such. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Are you sure there's no problem for us to stay in this courtyard? Okay. Zhu Wuxin carried Feng Shi in his arms and walked toward the depths of the courtyard. Feng Shi had been taken away. Yi Qing Luo had no other choice. She followed Zhu Wuxian's footsteps as they stepped into the depths. In this courtyard, there were about 7 to 8 exquisitely decorated rooms. Every single room The distance between each room was very far, as though it was an independent living space. Yi Qing Luo followed Zhu Wu Xian, and after a few turns, finally they stopped in front of a room. Zhu Wu Xian walked in calmly. Chapter 4890. Yi Qing Luo looked at him as he opened the room's door with ease. With great precision, he placed Feng Shi on a chair in the dark. A strange feeling arose from the bottom of her heart. She frowned slightly as she stared at Zhu Wu Xian. This room is your room. Zhu Wu Xian's figure paused slightly as he poured the tea, but it was only for a moment. He continued to pass the teacup to Feng Shi as he replied, Yi Qing Luo, no, not. Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed slightly as a strange glint flashed past her eyes. She originally thought that Zhu Wu Xian's room was in the forbidden grounds of the secluded palace. However, Zhu Wuxin denied it. Zhu Wu Xian disdained to lie. What he said should be the truth. But if this place had nothing to do with Zhu Wu Xian, then why was Zhu Wu Xian so familiar with the structure of this room? Apparently, it wasn't his first time here. Zhu Wu Xian seemed to have seen through Yi Qing Luo's doubts. In the dark, his eyes were as deep as the sea as he stared at her without blinking. It was quiet and serene, floating and sinking. This is Gu Jingyu's room. In the dark, the man's voice sounded especially hoarse and ethereal. Yi Qing Luo went into a slight daze. Gu Jingyu? The mastermind behind the secluded palace. Disciple? The palace lord on the surface? This was his room? The so-called forbidden grounds in the secluded palace indeed referred to the place where the people with status in the secluded palace stayed, like Gu Jingyu, Ling Long, and the like. Then, the mastermind behind the secluded palace? That person can't possibly stay here. Zhu Wu Xian opened his mouth calmly as his voice sounded cold. Finishing his words, he sat down on another chair. Gu Jingyu isn't in the base. If the lights are lit, it will easily alert the servants in the courtyard. The room was dark. It wasn't so dark that one couldn't see their fingers in front of them, but it was slightly dim and one could vaguely see the silhouette of a figure. Yi Qing Luo walked slowly to Feng Shi's side and stood still as both her hands gently pressed on Feng Shi's shoulder. Seeing Feng Shi drinking the tea in the cup, she rubbed his head and asked Zhu Wu Xian, "Why do you know this place?" "I came here when I was discussing matters in the past," Zhu Wu Xian explained. In other words, he had been here before. He was referring to the time when they worked together with the Palace of Darkness. And now he was innocent. Yi Qing Luo nodded. "Then how long are we going to hide here?" "It's not convenient for you to bring a child with you now." Zhu Wuxin's expression was calm. "Wait until there are fewer people guarding the entrance before you leave." Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly and didn't reply. The room fell into a dead silence. Yi Qing Luo looked at Feng Shi's exhausted look. He bent down and picked him up, wanting to let him sleep for a while. The next moment, Zhu Wuxin's hands were already stretched out. He picked up Feng Shi before her. "There's a bed over there." Yi Qing Luo remained silent. He followed Zhu Wuxin into the inner room. Feng Shi had been a bit nervous, but after lying on the bed for a while, he fell asleep. Yi Qing Luo sat by the bed as her gaze congealed on Feng Shi's sleeping face. Zhu Wuxin stood at the side. "You can also rest for a while and recuperate." "No need," Yi Qing Luo replied indifferently. There wasn't much fluctuation in her tone. In the darkness, Zhu Wu Xian's eyes rippled slightly. His eyes, which were as deep as the sea, gazed deeply at the young lady. "You really want to cut off all relations with me?" he asked. Yi Qing Luo didn't even raise her head. "There's no relationship between you and me." Chapter 4891. Zhu Wu Xian scoffed lightly. There was a hint of cold mockery in her laughter. "Really?" His voice was hoarse and his emotions were unclear. If a woman is heartless, she's really heartless. Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged. I don't know about other women, but I'm indeed this heartless. So, you don't have to express your goodwill to me intentionally. She had no way to stop others from liking her and being obsessed with her. The only thing she could do was to reject. No matter if Zhu Wuxian was obsessed with her in the past, or the current adoration. That wasn't important, because, no matter what kind of feelings, it had nothing to do with her. But, this kind of you makes me like you even more. Zhu Wuxian seemed as though he couldn't hear Yi Qing Luo's rejection as he gave a low laugh. That murmur of a voice. It was filled with a strange charm. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased as a strange feeling arose in her heart. But not waiting for Yi Qing Luo to speak again, Zhu Wuxian had already turned around. Take a rest first. I'll go out and take a look. After Zhu Wuxian left, there was only her and the sound asleep Feng she left in the room. An unfamiliar place, an unfamiliar environment. Even though Zhu Wuxian said that as long as there were no lights here, it would be very safe, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but pay attention to the surrounding environment. She didn't dare to let her guard down. In her mind, she had been rehearsing the plan to leave the underground palace, not knowing how long had passed. Dang! A soft sound was heard from afar. She could faintly see the lights shining brightly. The bright lights were getting nearer. Yi Qing Luo's heart jolted violently. Someone came. She stood up alertly as she listened sharply to the movements outside. Orderly footsteps slowly got nearer. Yi Qing Luo leaned close to the window. She could faintly see about 20 to 30 secluded palaces' disciples directly passing by the house she was in as they headed forward. Those secluded palaces' disciples' discussions were clearly transmitted into her ears. The underground palace is only so big, we've already searched the entire place and still can't find anyone. Don't tell me they really hid in this forbidden grounds? If they really hid in this forbidden grounds and offended that person in the main house, he would die even worse. That Feng family's disciple, Elder Su, said we must keep her alive. We have to find him before that person in the main house finds out. Just like that, we ran into the forbidden area again. If that person in the main house finds out, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape. What are you afraid of? Don't we have Princess Linglong to back us up? Just as he was speaking, Yi Qing Luo heard a familiar voice ringing. Search for this princess. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we have to find them. That was Princess Linglong. Princess Linglong's tender voice was filled with anger. Her voice was slightly sharp. So what if it's a forbidden area? If royal father blames me, this princess will bear the responsibility. Don't let go of any room. He searched every inch of the place. I will make it hard for them to escape, even if they have wings. Those angry orders. This made Yi Qing Luo's brows creased. From the looks of it, Linglong did not see the letter that Feng she had left for her. Linglong felt that Feng she had lied to her. Their sincere friendship had been fed to the dogs. So now all he could think of was he caught her and Feng Shi. Yi Qing Luo could sense it. Feng she would probably be sad for a period of time. To coax Linglong back would probably be a little difficult. But before this, she had to pay attention. Would those secluded palaces' disciples really barge into this room to capture them? If they really came in, where would she hide if she took Feng Shi with her? Chapter 4892. The noises outside got louder and louder. More and more people came. It seemed like all the disciples of the gloomy palace in the underground palace had gathered here. About half an hour later, the noises outside slowly became softer. Indistinctly, they heard Linglong's angry bellow. What's the use of father keeping you bunch of rubbish? You can't even find 2 people. Search for this princess. Search clearly. Don't miss any spot. Linglong bellowed furiously. The bunch of secluded palace's disciples were trembling in fear. They were afraid that they would make Princess Linglong unhappy and become a target. And at this moment, an extremely low voice was heard from outside the door. "This room. Do you want to search?" The voice was very close. Yi Qingluo knew. This person was asking about the room. He was referring to the room she was in right now. Her heart thumped fiercely, and she held her breath. And just as that secluded palace's disciple asked this question, the other secluded palace's disciples all turned silent. This room is Palace Lord's room. Palace Lord hates people touching his things. If Palace Lord knew that we had stepped into his room, I'm afraid. The secluded palace's disciples didn't finish their words, but everyone understood the meaning behind those words. Palace Lord had always been a loner. He wasn't close to anyone, and he hated anyone who got close to his turf. Previously, there was a female disciple who tried to sneak into Palace Lord's room. In the end, she was thrown out of the room. That female disciple ended up in a miserable state. After that, Palace Lord even got someone to clean up his room, from top to bottom, as though it was tainted with something dirty. From now on, everyone knew about Palace Lords. Mysophobia. There's no sound in the room, so it shouldn't be possible for him to be inside. Someone found an excuse. That Feng family's girl is so young, so she shouldn't know how to restrain her presence. If that brat is really hiding here, with so many of us here, how could we not sense his presence? Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. A group of people, ready to leave again. Yi Qingluo's heart didn't feel at ease because of this, as expected. The next moment, she heard Linglong's voice nearing them. "What are you all standing here for? Have you checked that house?" "Princess Linglong, this is the palace master's room," a disciple of the abysmal palace reminded. "So what if it's Brother Yu's room? Go in and check." Linglong directly dragged him into the room. "If Brother Yu blames me, I will take responsibility." Bang! The door was slammed open. A loud sound of collision rang out. Yi Qingluo immediately stepped back and bent down to carry Feng Shi. His gaze focused on the window at the side. Little by little, he carefully moved towards the window. Under Linglong's threatening gaze, the disciples of Abyss Palace entered the room uneasily. The flames flickered. Yi Qingluo could clearly see the reflection of a few figures outside. Step by step, he approached them. They were in the foyer. She's in the back room. They were only a few steps away. Yi Qingluo's eyes sunk slightly as she bent down slightly, preparing to leap out of the window. "What are you doing?" Suddenly, a melodious voice like a bell rang out. That voice was soft and gentle, yet it did not lose the charm of a mature woman. It was extremely pleasant to the ears. Moreover, it was filled with the dignity of a superior. The moment this voice was heard, the entire courtyard's voices stopped abruptly. Even the people outside the room froze on the spot, motionless. Chapter 4893. Sister Qingge. When Linglong heard that voice, her tone became much more obedient. The voice of the woman named Qingge came again. "What's with all the noise?" "The person that father caught ran away." "I'm catching them," Linglong replied obediently. She was no longer as arrogant as before. "Go ahead and catch them. Don't make a scene here," Qingge said in a low voice. "Go and get everyone back. Don't run into the courtyard." "Sister Qingge," Linglong said coquettishly, "those two people have angered me. I want them to pay the price. I've searched the entire underground palace, but I can't find them. They must be hiding here. How would I not know if they are hiding here?" Qingji's tone was even more stern. "If you continue to make a scene, you can forget about staying in this base." Linglong sniffled in fear. She had never been wronged before. She felt aggrieved and indignant. How could he still care about the respect he had for the other party? Linglong harumphed. Do you think I don't know that you brought an outsider to hide in the courtyard behind father's back? Qingji's tone was low and threatening. Linglong was unmoved. He's a man, right? Sister Qingge, you like him, right? But if this matter were to reach royal father's ears, guess what would happen to royal father? Are you threatening me? Qingji's tone was cold and murderous. Linglong was a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers. She was extremely fearless. I'm merely reminding Big Sis Qing Pigeon that no matter how much Imperial Father dotes on you, he will definitely not allow you to step on his bottom line. Good, very good. If you want to make a scene, go ahead. Qingge was so angry that she laughed. I'll let you search here. I want to see what you can find out. Qingji's words made Linglong cower. She had forcefully brought the disciples of the Palace of Darkness to search the courtyard. He forcefully led the Dark Nether Palace disciples to search the courtyard. This was already a violation of his father's rules. It was a well-known forbidden area. Only she and her brothers and sisters could enter. The other disciples of the Palace of Darkness, including Elder Su and the others, were not allowed to enter. The other disciples of the Nether Palace, even Elder Su and the others, were not allowed to step in. She wanted to capture them and pretend that nothing had happened. They wanted to pretend that nothing had happened after arresting him. He did not expect to be caught red-handed by the pigeon. If Qing Pigeon told father, no matter how much her lord, father, pampered her in the palm of his hand, he would probably blame her. Linglong pondered for a moment. With a wave of his hand, he turned around and left. I'm not investigating anymore. Anyway, if he really ran into this forbidden area, Sister Qing Pigeon will have to take responsibility. I have nothing to worry about. With that, he led his men and left the courtyard in a grandiose manner. Silence gradually returned to the courtyard. Those messy auras and noisy footsteps had also disappeared. However, Yi Qing Luo held Feng Shi in her arms and stood rooted to the ground, not moving at all, because she could sense it. The woman named Qingge. He did not leave. She was still standing at the open door, even though there was a wall between them. Yi Qing Luo seemed to be able to feel that Qingji's line of sight was directed towards her. Moments later, Qingge walked into the room. Yi Qing Luo's heart jumped. What's the matter? What happened? Suddenly, a mellow voice which was like fine wine drifted into Yi Qing Luo's ears in this quiet and spacious courtyard. It was just a simple sentence. It made Yi Qing Luo's eyes widen. Her petite body suddenly tensed up. A whirlpool seemed to form beneath her eyes. Chapter 4894. And at this moment, Qingge walked into the room. When she heard that voice, she immediately stopped in her tracks. Even her voice became high-pitched. It's just that the princess is fooling around. It's nothing serious. She left the room and closed the door. After that, she walked briskly towards the direction of the voice. The tone changed from Qingge and that briskly footsteps. Yi Qing Luo was sure. She was indeed like what Linglong had said, adoring that man. But Yi Qing Luo's long eyelashes trembled slightly. She stood stiffly on the spot in a daze for some time, until her arms, which were hugging Feng, she felt a little heavy. She then regained her senses and placed Feng Shi back on the bed. She sat back on the bed. Her long and narrow eyes were cold in the darkness, as though it had blended in with the ink. Did she hear wrongly? That voice earlier was familiar, even if it was just one word. She could tell who it was. Mo Xian. That was Mo Xian's voice. Was it an illusion? Had she missed Mo Xian too much and heard wrongly? Yi Qing Luo kept trying to find excuses, but she was very clear. There was no way she could have heard Mo Xian's voice wrongly. His voice was so familiar that it penetrated deep into her bones. Her heart was in a mess. Why was Mo Xian in the base of secluded palace? If he was so close, Why hadn't he gone to the Feng residence to look for her for such a long time? And what was the relationship between him and that lady named Qingge? The more she thought, the more confused her thoughts became. Various kinds of melodramatic plots played in her mind. Of course, these melodramatic plots weren't because DMO Xian had betrayed Cheju or had fallen in love with someone else. She had 100% trust in DMO Xian, but she couldn't control her imagination. Other ladies were obsessed with his peerless looks and forced him to marry her. No matter what DMO Xian's reason was. He was alone, meeting a lady whom she didn't know. This was a huge mistake. Believing was one thing. However, it was another matter to feel unhappy in his heart. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers clenched into a fist. He continued to let his imagination run wild. She reckoned that she would have to demolish the house. No, she must go over personally and ascertain with her own eyes whether that person was DMO Xian or not. If it really was DMO Xian, let's see why he's here. Yi Qing Luo glanced at Feng Shi and tapped her forehead with her fingertip. A faint wisp of profound light seeped into the center of Feng Shi's forehead. Then she tucked him in and stood up. He flipped his palm. A snow-white dumpling was standing next to Feng Shi. Yi Qing Luo patted its head lightly. Chi, I'll be right back. There was that farce just now. If nothing went wrong, this place should be safe. He asked Chi to stay here and watch over Feng Shi. If there was anything, she would know in time. Yi Qing Luo's figure was like a ghost as she blended into the night. He didn't notice it. At the moment when she left, in a dark corner, a tall and straight figure stood there quietly, staring at the young girl's departing figure without blinking. The wind blows. The man's red robe was like fire rippling. His thin lips curled into a cold arc with a faint smile. He was obviously smiling, but his whole body was emitting a cold intent. Yi Qing Luo followed the memory of the voice just now. After Linglong's disturbance in the courtyard, it was very quiet now. There was no sign of anyone. Yi Qing Luo's journey was smooth. There were many rooms here, and they were all pitch black. Chapter 4895. Yi Qing Luo passed through a few rooms. Her gaze locked onto the front. In the middle of the courtyard was the largest and most luxurious house. She could vaguely see the bright, luminous pearl light, like a star in the dark night. It was there. Yi Qing Luo stared at that huge house, but her footsteps slowly came to a halt. That familiar voice seemed to be reverberating in her mind. Over and over again it reminded her that was indeed DMO Xian's voice. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes. Her gaze landed on the red ring on her slender fingertip. One could vaguely see a vivid and lifelike phoenix stretching its most beautiful figure on the blood jade-like ring. She gently stroked the ring. This profound phoenix ring was a mandarin duck ring, like DMO Xian's profound dragon ring. If DMO Xian was really here, the profound phoenix ring should have some reaction. But now the profound phoenix ring had no reaction at all. This was why Yi Qing Luo curled her fingers tightly. Her gaze was on the profound phoenix ring, quietly staring for a while. She took a deep breath and moved toward the room again without making a sound. Just as she got closer, Yi Qing Luo heard a sound coming from inside the room. It was a woman's light footsteps and a gentle and elegant laughter. This laughter was inexplicably piercing. A man and a woman alone in this place, and they were laughing so happily. What was so funny? Yi Qing Luo suppressed the surging unhappiness in her chest and calmed herself down. What she heard was false. She couldn't simply imagine. Yi Qing Luo held her breath and followed the direction of the laughter to confirm the woman's location. Following that direction, she quietly moved closer. Her movements were very light. While moving, there was no sound at all. She neared the innermost room's window. Yi Qing Luo looked through the half-open window. She saw the bright, luminous pearl light spilling out from the window. Yi Qing Luo turned sideways and quietly looked through the window at the situation inside the room. Inside the room, the furnishings were elegant and there was a faint fragrance. One look and you knew it was an exquisite woman's study room. The surroundings were filled with bookshelves and all kinds of books. There was a long table that was bent over, and it was filled with books and scrolls. Yi Qing Luo's corner. They could only see a fairy-like woman in a long white dress sitting on one side of the long table, whereas opposite the lady, Yi Qing Luo could only see half a side face of the figure. The figure was tall and slender, beautiful and straight like jade. It was just a glance. Yi Qing Luo was certain. That guy was her Ah Xian. Damn it. Her Ah Xian was meeting girls behind her back. Should she rush in and catch the woman? Or should she squat outside and watch what kind of shady business they were doing behind her back? In Yi Qing Luo's heart, it was as if 10,000 horses were galloping and roaring. That little princess is very willful. I'm sorry for disturbing you. The woman spoke in a gentle and graceful manner. Her eyes flickered, and her expression was full of tenderness and affection. Yi Qing Luo's fingers tightened. He had the urge to strangle that woman. The man didn't even raise his head, as if he didn't see the woman's flirtatious gaze. He lowered his head and searched through the books and scrolls on the table. His slender, jade-like fingers stirred the chaos on the table. It's fine. Too cold and in different words. But it made Qing Ji's eyes gush with joy. But she pretended to be reserved and tried to find a topic. I heard that the Lord kidnapped the young master of the Feng family and was rescued by someone. That little princess must be furious. Chapter 4896. The man who had been looking down at the book suddenly raised his eyes. Her black hair was as fine as flowing water and spread out like fine silk. Under the bright light of the night pearl, it rippled with a black luster. What did you say? The man's voice was deep without much emotion, but Qing Ji's eyes were filled with joy. This was the first time he took the initiative to respond to her. Did this mean was he interested in what he had to say? Qing Ge suppressed the excitement in her heart and continued the topic. That little princess is very angry. She is now looking for someone in the underground palace. The previous sentence. The man said faintly. Qing Ge thought for a moment. The young master of the Feng family? Why did he kidnap the Feng family? The man asked in a deep voice. Qing Ge shook her head. Maybe because the Feng family is related to that. She looked down at the messy books and paintings on the table. Maybe his lord has found another way. She didn't know if it was an illusion. When she finished this sentence, the man's eyes seemed to sink a little. But when she looked carefully, the man's expression was still calm, without the slightest fluctuation of emotion. It was rare for a man to be interested in her topic, although Qing Ge felt strange. She didn't want to end the topic like this, so she continued. The Feng family is really capable. They actually found this place to save people, but it's easy to come in but difficult to get out. Not only can that person not save people, I'm afraid he will also die here. Look at how angry the little princess is. I'm afraid when the two people are found, they will be dead. The man didn't say anything at this moment. Instead, he looked down lightly. His eyes were a little cold. His breath was inexplicably cold. Qing Ge sensed that something was wrong. Her smiling eyes dimmed slightly. She seemed to be testing, but also seemed to be inadvertently asking, You seem to care a lot about the Feng family? The man didn't even lift his eyelids. He didn't mean to answer. If you are really interested in the Feng family, I can also help you bring the young master of the Feng family and the person who came to save people here. Qing Ge guessed the man's thoughts and suggested. As she spoke, she sized up the man's expression. The man lowered his head. His fine black hair covered half of his face. His expression was half hidden. He couldn't see it clearly. Qing Ge was a little unfathomable. She looked at the handsome half of the man's face and said tentatively, Little princess, you couldn't find them even after searching the entire underground palace. Perhaps they really are hiding here. As long as they enter this courtyard, I will be able to find them. For some unknown reason, Chingo always felt that the man in front of her was like a god, noble and elegant. He had an inexplicable concern for the people of the Feng family. However, after probing, the man's expression did not change. Even when she took the initiative to mention that she was going to look for the young master of the Feng family, he calmly spat out 2 words, "No need." It was a gentle and slow, simple, but not rude rejection. It seemed that the matters of the Feng family had nothing to do with him. Chinga lowered her beautiful eyes and suppressed the strange feeling in her heart. Maybe she thought too much? Chinga was relieved. Her cherry lips evoked an elegant smile. She held a book in her hand, got up and walked towards the man. "Look at this. Doesn't it look like what you are looking for?" Chapter 4897. She walked to the man's side. She placed the book in her hand in front of the man. Her long, white dress fluttered and brushed against the man's purple robe. She leaned over slightly and lifted her wrist slightly, brushing past the man's ear, and landed on the book. This distance would be very close. And this position would also pull the relationship between the two closer. Chinga was confident. Take out this angle, the most beautiful side. Let this man's sight stop on her for a few more breaths. Outside the window, Yi Ching Luo clenched her fists tightly and stared at Chinga fiercely, getting closer and closer to the man's body, especially when she saw Ching Ji's long veil brushing against the man's robe. She couldn't wait to rush in. The two separated. That Chinga wanted to seduce her man? Wasn't it good to live well? What was she thinking about? And, Xian, that pig trotter. Why didn't he avoid it? Why did he let Chinga get close to him? Did he still have any self-awareness as a married man? No way. She wanted to rush in. She wanted to tear that Chinga who wanted to get close to her man into pieces. Ow, ow, ow. So angry, so angry. So angry that she wanted to roar like an evil dragon. Calm down, calm down. Old Man Song's voice interrupted Yi Ching Luo's inner drama. He coughed lightly and comforted her. You must believe in the Overlord. He is the man you like. Of course I believe him. Yi Ching Luo said this sentence without any hesitation. She had never said that she didn't believe in DMO Xian, but believing in DMO Xian didn't mean that she couldn't feel good. How could those wild chickens which came out of nowhere, how could they run around DMO Xian? Since you believe in him, then you should believe that he will not have any ill intentions towards you. Old Man Song could clearly feel Yi Ching Luo's suppressed manic emotions. Yi Ching Luo replied naturally, Of course. She raised her chin and sneered in her heart. That Chingo, is she better looking than me? Smarter than me? Just a piece of trash. Old Man Song listened to the young lady's sophistry. How could a piece of trash make her so angry? Was she really as calm as she looked on the surface? He didn't dare to say it, nor did he dare to ask. Yi Ching Luo stared fixedly at the two people who were getting nearer and nearer. He almost rolled up his sleeves and climbed in through the window at this moment. The man sat in front of the table with his head slightly lowered. It was as though he had sensed something. He turned his head and looked out of the window. His obsidian eyes were as deep as the sea. It was like a whirlpool that could cause one to fall into it with a single glance. Yi Ching Luo leaned against the wall, taking big mouthfuls of air silently as she asked in her mind, Did he see it? Did he see it? I dodged so quickly that he probably didn't see me, right? Just now, at the critical moment, she jerked her head back, but she did not know. If DMO Xian had captured her silhouette, she was very fast, but DMO Xian's acuity was extraordinary. Even if he saw it, he would know it was you and would not come out to catch you. What's there to be afraid of? Old Man Song did not understand what Yi Ching Luo was panicking about. Yi Ching Luo hugged her head. If Xian knew that I was peeping at him, I would be so shameless. Old man song. Ah, inside the house. The man who was looking out of the window had a trace of mischievous smile in his eyes. Even his entire face seemed to have softened a little. Chapter 4898. Qingge was preparing to approach the man quietly to carry out her plan. What entered her eyes was a smear of gentleness. Her heart felt as though it had been shot by an arrow, as a little deer was pounding around. Overlord. A flirtatious voice called out to the man softly. Qingge's body leaned forward slightly, as she wanted to get closer. A swoosh sound was heard. Qingge's outstretched hand was blocked by a book. Tightly, the end of the book was slightly exerted. Qingge was pushed 2 steps away from the man. That book was casually thrown aside from the man's hand. That kind of nonchalance, as though he was throwing away unnecessary rubbish. Overlord. Qingge's heart skipped a beat as her voice turned hoarse. Her delicate and gentle face revealed a tinge of coquettish grumbling. She hadn't finished her words. Her throat was choked by the man's icy cold gaze. Don't come near me. The man's voice was emotionless, so bland that it was almost cold. The kind of coldness and heartlessness, a direct and decisive rejection. Qingge's heart suddenly felt a little pain, but she still lowered her brows, lowering her attitude to the lowest. Yes, I've overstepped. Ah. When Yi Qingge cautiously stuck her head out again, looking into the window, Qingge had already returned to her original seat. As for Dmo Xian, he was at his original position, not moving at all. He seemed to be very focused, lowering his head to look at the book in his fingers. From the looks of it, Dmo Xian should not have sensed her presence earlier, right? She had already dodged in time. If Dmo Xian saw it, based on his vigilance, he would definitely check it out. But Dmo Xian had no reaction at all. He should not have sensed it. Thinking of this, Yi Qingluo heaved a sigh of relief. While she was relaxing, Yi Qingluo couldn't help but think. What was Dmo Xian trying to investigate in this base of secluded palace? This woman called Qingge. What the hell was this? From Linglong's words earlier, she could tell. The people in secluded palace actually knew that there was an outsider man in Qingge's room. Presumably that sinister and cunning person behind the scenes in secluded palace knew about this. But why? Would he allow Dmo Xian to stay in secluded palace's base? The people behind the palace of gloomy darkness were not afraid. Had Dmo Xian really found something? He was deep in thought. Yi Qingluo suddenly raised her vigilant eyes and looked behind her. She heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Under the misty night sky, the light from the luminous pearl shining through the window flickered. A figure walked out of the darkness. Her red dress was completely different from her cold and indifferent temperament, but it had a different kind of tension and charm. Zhu Wuxin. How did he find his way here? Yi Qingluo frowned slightly as she shot him a warning stare. Zhu Wuxin's sleeve moved slightly, revealing a small figure. Xiao Tuanzi opened her eyes and looked around, her eyes filled with worry and anxiety. Yi Qingluo's brows creased even more tightly. Why did Zhu Wuxin bring Fengxi here? She cautiously glanced through the window and saw that the man was still maintaining his original posture. The person in the house was Dmo Xian. That man was too sharp. There is some movement here. It was highly possible that Dmo Xian would sense it. She took quick steps forward and took Fengxi from Zhu Wuxin's arms. She immediately wrapped her arms tightly around her neck, as though she had been given a huge shock. Yi Qingluo took a look at the direction of the room and patted Fengxi's back lightly. Her gaze congealed slightly, as though it was covered with a layer of darkness. Chapter 4899. The young lady was quiet and her gaze was heavy. She looked at Zhu Wuxian for a long time before she slowly retracted her gaze. Then she hugged Fengxi tightly and turned to leave. Zhu Wuxian's icy cold lips curled upwards, revealing an unfathomable smile. There was Zhu Wuxin and Feng Shi. If there was any movement between the two of them, it would be a piece of cake for the people in the room to find out, although she was very unwilling to let the two of them be alone in the room. But now, for Feng Shi and her safety, and because of Dmo Xian, she wasn't clear about the reason why Dmo Xian was in the base of the Palace of Darkness, but Dmo Xian must have his own motives. She couldn't disturb Dmo Xian, and she couldn't let the disciples of the Palace of Darkness disturb Dmo Xian. Overlord. Qing Ji's voice was as gentle as the wind. She stared at Dmo Xian's slender, jade-like fingers that were holding onto a piece of paper. This page, is there a clue? He stared at the contents of the page. It had been a quarter of an hour. He didn't turn the page. He just stared at it in a daze. This made Qingge, who had been paying attention to him, feel strange. Just as Qingge shouted, "Lord Dizun," Dmo Xian's fingers tightened. The thin book paper was torn in half with a tearing sound. In the quiet study, the sound was extremely clear. Overlord? Qingge was startled. Dmo Xian slammed the book on the table. The force was so great that the books on the table were blown away by the strong wind, which scattered all over the floor. There was no emotion on that peerless face. Between his brows was a bone-chilling coldness. It was as if it carried the force of a thunderbolt. A storm was brewing. "Overlord, what's the matter?" This was the first time Qingge had seen such a powerful Dmo Xian. Her delicate body trembled slightly from the shock. Dmo Xian's dark eyes were fixed on the direction outside the window. The wind was blowing, and there was no sound outside the window. That was the owner of the pair of eyes that was watching him. The aura had disappeared, and at the moment when he disappeared, he could clearly feel it. The other was an aura that made people want to do evil. Yi Qing Luo carried Feng Shi as she returned to Gu Jingyu's room. "Why are you awake?" Yi Qing Luo rubbed Feng Shi's head, indicating that he could speak now. Feng Shi's face turned red as she hugged Yi Qing Luo tightly. Cece thought that because Cece was too lazy and only knew how to sleep, Fairy Sister didn't want Cece anymore. The little person's voice was crisp and clear, and there was even some fear and panic in it. Yi Qing Luo placed her by the bedside. "No matter, it's not entirely Cece's fault that Cece wants to sleep." She glanced meaningfully at Zhu Wuxian, her pink lips curling into a deep arc with unknown meaning. Just now, as soon as he entered this room, Zhu Wuxin poured a cup of tea for Feng Shi. There was clearly something wrong with the tea. However, seeing that it was only a few hours of rest, he didn't think too much of it. Therefore, she didn't stop Feng Shi from drinking that cup of tea. It was normal for Feng Shi to feel sleepy and doze off after drinking that cup of tea. Zhu Wuxin didn't have the slightest bit of embarrassment after being exposed. He was magnanimous and had no intention to explain. Instead, he asked Yi Qing Luo, "Didn't I ask you not to wander around? Why did you run so far away? Isn't this what you hoped for?" Yi Qing Luo tilted her head. Her gaze was slightly cold as she looked at him indifferently. "You let Feng Shi fall into a deep sleep and took the opportunity to draw my attention when I was alone." Qing Ji's situation. Chapter 4900. Her voice paused slightly as she tilted her head and laughed. "Isn't it because you want me to see the scene where Ah Xian and another lady interact alone?" Zhu Wuxian didn't say a word. The gaze which he shot towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with an unknown deep meaning, as though he wanted to see her into his eyes. Silence. That represented a tacit agreement. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly as she wasn't angry. "Unfortunately, I'll have to disappoint you. The scene which you want to see will not be staged." The young lady's tone was obviously filled with ridicule. When she tilted her head slightly, her long and narrow eyes squinted. "Endless ridicule. Do you know what I want to see?" In the darkness, the man's deep and chilly voice rang. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Do you need to ask me what you want to see next? I'm curious. Zhu Wu Xian suddenly walked nearer to her as his footsteps were slightly heavy. In your heart, how do you see me? When he got nearer, and it was accompanied by a sky full of cold air, it made Feng. She hid behind Yi Qing Luo out of fear. Yi Qing Luo hugged Feng Shi with one hand as she comforted his frightened heart while looking at him without any change in expression. You don't want to know. But I do. Zhu Wu Xian got nearer as his chilly intent pounced on her. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were gloomy as her long and narrow eyes were filled with a complicated glint. She pinched Feng Shi's hand lightly as she caressed it casually. She spoke calmly as her lips curled into a cold smile. Do you want to hear the truth or a lie? A lie. Zhu Wu Xian replied without any hesitation. Yi Qing Luo. Wishful thinking. A man who didn't play his cards according to the norm was really quick-witted. She shouldn't have asked a truth or a lie. Her face was solemn as she put on a serious look. I'm a kind young lady. I only speak the truth. Following that, she shot him a cold glance as her voice was indifferent. Actually, in my heart, I feel that you are rather annoying. Zhu Wu Xian's expression remained unchanged, and Yi Qing Luo didn't beat around the bush as she went straight to the point. What you're thinking, isn't it to see a gap between Xian and me, making me misunderstand that Xian has betrayed me? All sorts of schemes. In the end, it was just for her to see it with her own eyes. The man she loved, even when he knew that she was also in the God realm. However, he was still hiding in this place with another woman, a man and a woman, alone together. As for the other woman, it was obvious that she liked him. If it was any other woman who saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. He was afraid that he would lose his mind and lose his rationality. Thus, it affected the relationship between them. Aren't you angry? Zhu Wu Xian neither admitted nor denied it. Instead, he asked another question. Yi Qing Luo replied calmly, I'm angry. She raised her eyebrows. Of course I'm angry, but I'm not angry because he betrayed me, because I know that in this world, no one will love me more than Xian. Zhu Wuxin's brows furrowed tightly. His thin lips moved as if he wanted to refute. But in the end, he stopped himself from saying anything. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled up as her smile was tainted with some gentleness. I believe that Xian will not betray me. Ha! Zhu Wuxin sneered in a low voice. The coldness in his eyes intensified. He stood in front of the young lady as he looked down at her from a high position. In the darkness, the outline of his grave and stern face was faintly discernible. That pair of serene eyes suddenly revealed an icy glint. I indeed know that he's here. Zhu Wuxin's voice sounded abnormally deep. Chapter 4901. I indeed want you to see with your own eyes how the person you love is surrounded by other women when you're not around. As for him, he would rather be with another woman than come and see you. Even when you were forcefully betrothed to that Feng Chongqing by the acting God Emperor, he didn't appear. Zhu Wu Xian's words entered her ears clearly. Like a huge bell, it struck Yi Qing Luo's ears. His thin lips curled into a sneer. If he really cared about you and valued you, he wouldn't have let you face that kind of situation alone. He should stand out and admit that he is the one you want to marry. Zhu Wu Xian snorted, but he didn't. The one who stood out is me. The one who is willing to take responsibility for you is also me. He doesn't have the intention to spend the rest of his life with you, and he had never thought of appearing in front of your loved ones. Yi Qing Luo, wake up, he doesn't love you at all. The more Zhu Wu Xian spoke, the heavier his tone became. It almost pressured the air in the entire room, making one unable to breathe. Feng Shi's little hand clutched Yi Qing Luo tightly, as her little body trembled slightly. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she kept her in her arms, standing up slightly, blocking the man's icy cold aura. Young Master Zhu, are you mistaken about something? The young lady's voice was filled with extreme coldness. What right do you have to judge my relationship with Xian? Whether he doesn't care about me or not, whether he values me or not, I have my own judgment. As for you, so what if you stood out at that time? To me, your standing out made me feel very troublesome. Whether Xian wants to spend the rest of his life with me, that's a matter between Xian and I. Since I trust him, I will trust everything about him, and whether he loves me or not, it has nothing to do with you. The young lady's words were extremely indifferent, as though it was wrapped in ice. There wasn't any fluctuation of emotions, like thousands of silver needles, piercing into Zhu Wu Xian's heart. In his mind, every single word of the young lady's harsh words reverberated. I only like you, that's all. Why? Zhu Wu Xian's gaze was heavy as he looked at the young girl's face. Bit by bit, he shifted his gaze to the way she was holding Feng Shi in her arms, looking absolutely protective. The sorrow in his eyes deepened. Even the words that came out of his mouth sounded very hoarse. Why are you so cruel to me? Yi Qing Luo didn't avoid his line of sight. She looked into his deep, cold eyes. He enunciated each word clearly and resolutely. I don't like you, so whatever you do, it's wrong. His words caused the entire room to fall into a deathly silence. After a long while, Zhu Wuxin laughed softly. His laughter was filled with bitterness and cold ridicule. Because you love DMO Xian. So no matter what he does, it's right. Right? Yes. Yi Qing Luo replied decisively. Ha! Zhu Wu Xian let out another cold laugh. His chest was concussed. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and locked Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased as she struggled to break free. His strength was extremely great. When Feng Shi saw this, she immediately hugged Zhu Wu Xian's hand, wanting him to let go of Yi Qing Luo. Let go of Fairy Sister! But Zhu Wu Xian directly stretched out his hand and held Feng Shi in his arms as his body leaned forward tightly, forcing Yi Qing Luo to take 2 steps back. Her legs bent and touched the foot of the bed behind her. Chapter 4902. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased slightly. What do you want to do? Zhu Wu Xian locked her wrist with one hand. In the darkness, that faintly discernible grave and stern face was filled with endless coldness. The pair of eyes which blended in with the night, like a whirlpool, as though it was going to suck in everything around it. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. She had a bad premonition in her heart. Zhu Wu Xian's thin lips curled up. A deep and malicious voice rang beside the young lady's ear. You trust him so much, but will he believe you? Yi Qing Luo realized what Zhu Wu Xian wanted to do. Her expression suddenly sunk. Zhu Wu Xian. Yi Qing Luo bit his name heavily as her eyes seemed to be plated with a layer of frost. The young lady was furious. Her wrist, which was locked tightly by Zhu Wu Xian, suddenly turned in a strange position. She withdrew her hand from Zhu Wu Xian's grip. Immediately after, Yi Qing Luo stretched out her arm towards Zhu Wu Xian, trying to snatch Feng Shi away from his arms. But the moment she stretched out her hand, it was as though the man had seen through her actions. Yi Qing Luo had just stretched out her hand, but it was intercepted by Zhu Wu Xian halfway. Her fair hand was once again held by the man's broad palm, but this scene seemed as though Yi Qing Luo had taken the initiative to send herself into the man's hand, and right at this moment, a bam sound was heard. The tightly shut room door was suddenly pushed open. The ground suddenly began to shake. Even the things in the room started to sway. From outside the open door, it faintly projected the glow of the luminous pearl. In the room, the 2 people whose murderous intent was soaring were stunned for a moment by this sudden change. In the air, There was a ripple of an icy mountain's aura, as though it could freeze the surroundings into frost. The gloomy atmosphere was oppressive. The air was filled with a faint, chilly sandalwood fragrance. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Ah, Xian! Hearing the young lady's soft cry, the whirlpools at the bottom of Zhu Wuxin's eyes surged more and more like surging waves. He was like a beast that had been trapped for a long time and was about to be freed. At this moment, the cold smile on his thin lips was filled with evil and malice. He grabbed the girl's wrist and bent down to, "Come closer, girl." Zhu Wuxin. The refreshing fragrance of plums assaulted his nostrils. Yi Qing Luo recovered from the earlier shock. She pushed Zhu Wuxin's hand away with her other hand, her fingertips moving slightly. A fiery red fan appeared between her slender, white fingers. A sharp blade came out from the handle of the fan and pierced into the man's chest. The fresh blood was not conspicuous among the red clothes. Zhu Wuxin snorted. He lowered his eyes and looked at his chest. The sharp blade stung his eyes. He chuckled softly, and the emotions in his eyes surged even more intensely. It was tight and firm, completely ignoring the sharp blade in his chest. He wrapped an arm around the girl's shoulder. He moved closer to the girl. The sharp blade pierced deeper into his chest. But he didn't care. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyelashes trembled slightly. Very quickly, her eyes were left with a piece of ice which was like a 1,000-year-old snow mountain, cold to the bone. The moment the man's arm wrapped around her, with a backhand, she locked onto his arm. It was tight and her body was pushed out of his arm's range. She had just moved. A hand was placed on her waist. The force was extremely strong. The overbearing aura invaded her senses. Bam! A heavy object landed on the ground, reverberating through the house. Chapter 4903. That red robe fell heavily onto the ground. For a long time she didn't get up, but no one was paying attention to that side. When the strength around his waist and the scent of sandalwood lingered around his body, he felt a chill run down his spine. In Yi Qing Luo's eyes, all that was left was the face that was so close to her, like a god, noble and elegant. Ah, Xian! Yi Qing Luo called out softly. The man's eyes were as deep as ink, reflecting the young girl's charming and beautiful face. The moment their eyes met, it was as though there were only the two of them left in the world. Until, Overlord. A lady's gentle voice was heard from the side, breaking the tenderness in the room. Yi Qing Luo looked sideways towards the open door. She saw a lady dressed in white walking over. The chilly wind blew over. The lady's skirt was rolled up like a blooming white lotus, pure and noble. It was that woman called Qingge. The scene was a little unbelievable. Nestled in Mo Xian's arms, Yi Qing Luo was still in the mood to imagine a drama in her mind. Was this considered? Husband and cheating partner caught on the spot. Her and Chu Wu Xian, this cheating partner. It seemed. Their relationship was a little complicated. Above her head, Mo Xian's hoarse voice floated down. What are you thinking about? He didn't even look at Qingge from the corner of his eyes. His gaze was focused on Yi Qing Luo, and he could clearly see the various weird expressions on the young lady's face. Just a glance. He knew that his young lady was daydreaming again. Yi Qing Luo seemed as though she was caught red-handed as her cheeks flushed red and coughed violently. Nothing. Nothing. Mo Xian scoffed lightly as his slender fingers pinched her face. Don't let your imagination run wild. Then have you ever let your imagination run wild? Yi Qing Luo's narrow eyes curved as her eyes were filled with craftiness and ridicule. There was no ill feeling between the two of them. It made the man in red who was lying on the ground stand up shakily. Blood was gushing out from his chest. The corners of her lips were also bright red, but he was still smiling. The curve of his thin lips was clear and cold. That smile was startling to see. The scene in front of him was so warm that it could not contain anyone. It was as if it was mocking him, everything he had done. It was all just a joke. He couldn't interfere at all. Obviously, he already knew about this matter, but his heart would still hurt. Zhu Wuxin lowered his gaze and stared at the spot on his chest where blood was seeping out. The feeling of the blade stabbing into his chest still lingered in his body. But the pain here, it was not even half a beat away from the heart. Perhaps it was because his gaze was too deep. The man who was looking at the girl with deep affection suddenly raised his head. He glanced at Zhu Wuxan indifferently, carelessly, disdainfully and respectfully. His beautiful thin lips curled into a mocking smile. Then his hand slid down the girl's face and held her wrist. His fingers, with distinct joints, moved slightly. The blood-stained feather fan in the girl's hand fell into the man's hand. "It's dirty. Let me clean it for you." The man's voice wasn't very soft. In the quiet and spacious room, it was extremely clear to the ears. It could even echo. It was like he intentionally said it for someone to hear. That glower flame fan, which was stained with Zhu Wuxian's blood, was kept by Dmo Xian. Zhu Wuxian, Yi Qing Luo seemed to be recalling. That Zhu Wuxian whom she had stabbed, and was suddenly hit by Dmo Xian's palm. Chapter 4904. Her expression was somewhat complicated. Her long and narrow cat eyes slightly turned sideways as it congealed towards Zhu Wuxian's direction. Looking at Zhu Wuxian, who lowered his head and stared at her chest, his thin lips curled upwards, as though he was smiling yet not smiling. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lower lips slightly. Before she could open her mouth, the strength around her waist suddenly tightened. The man's deep and hoarse voice floated down from above. "So Pavilion Lord has the hobby of snatching someone else's wife." That voice sounded very calm, but Yi Qing Luo could still hear the deep chilliness in it. Like a sharp blade, it pierced towards Zhu Wuxian's body. Zhu Wuxian raised his eyes slightly, as his icy cold eyes met Dmo Xian's gaze. That smile, which didn't look like a smile, was still hanging by the side of his lips. As though he was provoking Dmo Xian, he spoke indifferently. "Snatch someone else's wife? She doesn't seem to be your wife." He laughed coldly. "You're not engaged, so why can't I be pleased with her?" Dmo Xian's gaze was like a gathering cold wind as it swirled up a whirlwind, just as Yi Qing Luo felt the chill as she raised her eyes to look at Dmo Xian. The man's emotions had already returned to normal. He didn't look angry and even curled his lips. His rosy red thin lips, the curve was noble, with some undetectable complacency. "I'm afraid Pavilion Lord has forgotten little Luo. Can only accept that the person standing beside her is me." The man's tone sounded very casual, but it made Zhu Wuxian smile, which was filled with provocation and sarcasm, freeze on his face. Dmo Xian was very satisfied that his own words had caused a huge reaction to Zhu Wuxian. The smile on his lips deepened. The casual expression on his brows also seeped out a few hints of provocation. "Of course I don't mind. There are people who are pleased with little Luo, because this means that this lord's foresight is indeed very good. This lord's little Luo, is very popular. Every word, every sentence, was showing his sovereignty." Zhu Wuxian's expression was getting uglier and uglier, but at this moment Dmo Xian gave a cold and sarcastic smile. "But Pavilion Lord's heart makes my little Luo very troubled. Pavilion Head's heart is troubling my little Luo Pavilion Head's heart is troubling my little Luo This sentence kept lingering in his mind. It was as if the replay button had been pressed. Zhu Wuxian's dark eyes were like raging waves. His hands that were hanging by his side slowly clenched into fists. His fingertips turned white. Her cold face exuded an eerie coldness. His fondness, just to make Yi Qing Luo so annoyed? Especially when these words were said by Dmo Xian. Zhu Wuxin snorted lightly. Her cold face was filled with pain. He looked straight at Yi Qing Luo as he asked word by word, "Do you also feel the same way?" The man's body was obviously a little unstable. Blood could be faintly seen seeping out of his fingertips that were covering his chest. Her red clothes were a little messy. From the looks of it, he was in an exceptionally sorry state. His gaze was abnormally scorching, as though it was going to burn her. Yi Qing Luo met his gaze as her brows creased slightly towards this question of his. To tell the truth, if she wanted to answer, it would be a little complicated. She deliberated over her words in her mind. Perhaps it was because she took too long to think. That arm which was placed across her waist suddenly increased its strength. It was slightly tight around her waist. Chapter 4905. As though he was warning her. Answer properly. Death question. Death stare. Yi Qing Luo. So, how should she answer in order to satisfy this master? Was Dmo Xian called? Smiling on the outside but cursing in his heart? On the surface, he looked extremely confident and complacent, totally unconcerned about Zhu Wuxian's thoughts towards her. In reality, in her heart, she hated Zhu Wuxian's thoughts towards her deeply. Yi Qing Luo secretly raised her hand and pinched his arm. "You don't believe me?" This kind of warning action must be condemned. Dmo Xian's inky eyes congealed deeply on the young lady's face. "Of course I believe you, I know. The person Lil Luo loves the most is me. You know, and you still strangled me?" Yi Qing Luo pinched his arm again. "Strangling me means that you don't believe me." Dmo Xian's brows were filled with a smile. "So you admit that the person you love the most is indeed me?" "No." Yi Qing Luo replied decisively, "The person I love the most is myself." "The person I love the most is you, that's enough." Dmo Xian lowered his head slightly, as his chin rested on the young lady's shoulder. Yi Qing Luo's little hand pinched the back of his hand from time to time. The man's joints were clearly defined. His fair, jade-like fingers felt extremely good to touch. She let out a light snort. The man suddenly held her little hand, as his deep magnetic voice was mellow like fine wine. "I'm because I care about you, so I'm not confident in myself. My fault. Don't be angry, The last at the end of the tone was raised, low, and lazy. Like a little hook, it tugged at Yi Qing Luo's heartstrings, bit by bit. Bam! In front, a sound of a heavy object colliding was heard. It dispersed the warmth in the room. Yi Qing Luo's vision had just turned over. She saw the figure who had knocked against the door, but was still swaying as he turned around to leave. That figure gave off a lonely and bitter feeling, as if he was fleeing for his life. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips moved, as she wanted to call out to Zhu Wuxian, but the words that were about to come out, she swallowed it back. What was the use of calling him? For people like Zhu Wuxian to a person who was so paranoid that he was speechless, since he couldn't give any response, or use indifference to reject. She could see that too. Those actions and words that Dmo Xian had said earlier were all completely different. It was all to make Zhu Wuxian give up. However, looking at Zhu Wuxin's swaying figure, which looked like it would fall at any moment, even when he walked, and the blood dripping on the ground, Yi Qing Luo's pink lips pursed even tighter. More or less, he couldn't bear to do it. Before he could speak, beside his ears, the man's faint voice floated down. "Xiao Zhu, follow him, don't let him die." A ball of white light suddenly shot toward Zhu Wuxin. The strong wind caused the tottering figure to lose its balance and fall to the ground. The huge nine-tailed fox swept its tail and hooked the man who was about to come into intimate contact with the ground. Then, in the blink of an eye, He disappeared from the underground palace of the Dark Palace. Ah, Xian! Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and hooked his neck, rubbing her head against his face. Thank you. Because of Zhu Wu Xian, you're thanking me? The man's obsidian eyes sunk slightly as his tone sunk. Yi Qing Luo shook her head, as her pink lips held a bright smile. I want to thank you for loving me so much. She tiptoed and hooked the man's neck. Chapter 4906. She knew. The reason why DMO Xian asked Little Nine to take care of Zhu Wu Xian. To her, Zhu Wu Xian's obsession and stubbornness made her troubled, and she could only face it coldly. But towards Zhu Wu Xian, she didn't hate him. After all, every love deserved to be respected, even if she didn't like Zhu Wu Xian, but not because of Zhu Wu Xian's feelings for her, and disregarding all the things that Zhu Wu Xian had done for her. After all, he had saved her several times. If she were to watch him leave with an injury and not care about anything, wasn't that too cold? In her heart, Zhu Wu Xian was actually considered as a friend. If he didn't have that obsession towards her, perhaps they were already friends. But even if she was worried about him, she couldn't let her own battle pet take care of Zhu Wu Xian and send him out of the Palace of Darkness base. If she made a move, she would definitely give Zhu Wu Xian hope. Then all the coldness that she had done previously would be wasted. DMO Xian apparently thought of this point. This man, he had always put his life on the line to think for her. Overlord, she? Who is she? A sharp voice broke the warmth between the both of them. Dressed in a fluttering white robe, the woman with a delicate and elegant face strode towards them. Yi Qing Luo's heels landed on the ground as she glanced sideways at Qinggu, who looked as though she was trying to kill her way over as her pink lips curled upwards. Zhu Wu Xian had left. Now another Qinggu had come. She and her Xian hadn't met each other for a long time. She didn't even have the chance to be alone with him. Furthermore, her Xian was hers. This lady, on what basis did she have to question her identity in this manner? Just as Qinggu walked over, Yi Qing Luo had already stretched out her hand and pulled DMO Xian behind her. Her petite and slender figure stood in front of DMO Xian and also blocked Qingji's path. Her pink lips rose slightly as she tilted her head slightly and looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Miss Qinggu has been looking for so long. Don't you know my identity? That smile was enchanting, like a dazzling mandala blossoming. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a smile. Qingji's eyes widened as she said in a dull tone, I'm sorry, the martial monarch never mentioned to me that there's another woman beside him. As she spoke, her cherry lips curled up into an elegant and distant smile. It sounded as though he was explaining the reason why he didn't know Yi Qing Luo. But every word and sentence was hinting at, if the man didn't mention his other half, it meant that the man didn't care about her at all and didn't acknowledge her identity at all. The last few words were another woman, as though hinting at Yi Qing Luo. Even if she really had an intimate relationship with DMO Xian, she was just one of them. Yi Qing Luo naturally understood the deep meaning behind the pigeon's words. Instead of getting angry, she smiled. Her eyes curved and she smiled. Ah, Xian, you don't have to mention my identity to unimportant people. She lifted her eyes and looked at the man's handsome face. When she met the man's ink-like eyes, the dimples in her eyes bloomed. Following that, she stretched out her hand and circled around the man's neck. She buried herself into the man's broad embrace. Her face was plastered on the man's chest. Her vision was directed towards Qinggu. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. Miss Qinggu, am I right? Chapter 4907. The young lady's words were filled with provocation. That long and narrow eyes were also filled with provocation. How could Qinggu not hear it and not understand it? And she could hear it and understand it. How could DMO Xian not understand it? But DMO Xian lowered his eyes and stared at the young lady in front of him, like a cat protecting its food, stretching out its sharp claws to block him. That bright and flamboyant, absolutely stunning face. It was deeply reflected in his eyes. The young lady's actions had deeply pleased Xian. The man's eyes were filled with tenderness and tenderness. His entire person seemed much gentler. Qingji's line of sight was fixed on Xian, looking at the man's obvious, joyful expression. Suddenly, she felt a dull pain in her heart. She could tell how much the Overlord valued the young lady in his arms. That pampering and gentle look. This was the first time she saw such an expression on the Overlord. No, more accurately, as long as the Overlord's line of sight fell on the young lady, his entire person was soft. But the moment his line of sight shifted, he would become the Overlord of the past, all of his transformations, just because of that young lady named Yi Qing Luo. Her heart was extremely unwilling, so jealous that she wanted to explode. I'm sorry, I don't really like my man being stared at by other women for too long. That young lady in red flame moved her body, blocking Qing Ji's line of sight. After Yi Qing Luo stood still, her pink lips rose slightly. Her enchanting face revealed a hint of cold provocation. I'm different from Xian, I am. Her lips curled up, smiling coldly. I am too possessive. I can't allow anyone to taint my man. She paused, her gaze turned sharp. Her half-squinted eyes reflected a cold glint as she stared coldly at Qingge. Word by word, she spat out the last half of the sentence, including in my heart, tainting. The young lady's overbearing and arrogant attitude, extremely flamboyant. It was a declaration of its sovereignty. Qing Ji's exquisite and beautiful face twisted slightly, but very quickly it returned to normal. Continuing to maintain her elegance and gentleness, she ignored Yi Qing Luo and instead looked towards Xian. The woman's voice was soft and gentle. Your Majesty, that man just now has met Master before. If he tells Master that you are here, I won't. Xian's voice was indifferent. Even if there is, this lord doesn't mind to dig it out from the dark corners. Other than reminding Xian, Qing Ying's words were there was another deeper meaning. Firstly, it reminded Xian. The current Yi Qing Luo and Zhu Wu Xian had an ambiguous relationship. Secondly, Yi Qing Luo and Chu Wu Xian's entanglement was unclear, which led to him being discovered by Chu Wu Xian. Thirdly, it was because Yi Qing Luo believed in Zhu Wu Xian and gave him a way out, which gave Zhu Wu Xian the chance to complain to his lord. But no matter what the reason was, Xian had already rejected it without hesitation. Xian's eyelids didn't even bother to look at her, and that deeply hurt Qing Ji's eyes. We haven't found any leads on Kuko. Qingge was rejected once and felt a little frustrated, so she could only bring out the topic which Xian was most interested in an attempt to attract his attention. Qingge. The man suddenly opened his mouth, as his voice was cold and emotionless as he called out her name. Chapter 4908. Qing Ji's eyes lit up as she looked at Xian shyly and joyfully. Overlord. You can go back now. The man's next sentence sent Qingge straight to hell from heaven. Qing Ji's face turned slightly pale as her voice quivered. Overlord, we don't have much time. I want to spend some time alone with Lil Luo. The man's indifferent voice cut off Qing Ji's words. He wrapped his arm around the young lady's slender waist as he looked down at the person in his arms. At this moment, even his voice had turned gentle. I miss her. I miss her. These 3 words were like a hammer, pounding heavily on Qing Ji's heart. Qing Ji's face turned as white as a sheet. Her slender fingers clenched tightly as her eyes looked miserable, delicate, and pitiful. Immediately, She looked at Dmo Xian with an aggrieved look. She turned around and jogged out of the room. Her jogging speed was slightly slow, as though she was waiting for the man to stop her. But it was impossible to stop her. Not even in this lifetime would he be able to stop her. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved in satisfaction as she stretched out her hand and touched Dmo Xian's head. Her slender, fair fingers caressed his silky, black hair. Then she released his hair in satisfaction as her fingertips moved downwards and hooked his chin. "Be good. I'll reward you." Following the young lady's words, her fingers that were holding the man's chin suddenly exerted force. Her eyebrows were tinged with a hint of a joyful smile. If it was any other time, based on Dmo Xian's character, he would definitely scold Qing, go to leave, and he wouldn't explain anything. Things like, "I want to spend some time alone with Lil Luo," or "I miss her," and so on. These were all purposely said for Qing Gu to hear. This kind of self-conscious action to cut off any thoughts of the opposite sex. It was simply too heartwarming, especially women who were totally irresistible. In front of the opposite sex, who had improper thoughts, proactively showing affection, using his actions to prove that he was a married man. Conscious enough. No wonder he was her family's Xian. The light bulb had run away. What the hell? The entire room was left with Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian, and a little dumpling who was sitting on the ground, staring at Dmo Xian in a daze. When he saw the two of them hugging each other and asking for a reward, Xiao Tuanzi had a feeling that her fairy was about to be snatched away. In the process of the young lady rewarding Dmo Xian, he suddenly pounced onto Yi Qing Luo's legs. His small body forcefully squeezed between the two of them. She had a small face carved out of jade, with distinct black and white, round and lively big eyes. She was very cute. Dmo Xian lowered his head and looked at the little dumpling who was pushing him with all her might. A few rays of light flashed across his obsidian-like eyes. He bent down and picked up the little dumpling. Xiao Tuanzi was so frightened that she immediately grabbed hold of Dmo Xian's collar. His shimmering purple robe was messed up by the scratches. He was not angry. He just used his hand to pinch Xiao Tuanzi's face. His brows rose as he looked at Yi Qing Luo. "When did you give birth to such a big child behind my back?" Yi Qing Luo, have a child? What do you mean by giving birth? How long had they been apart? Just a few months? I'm just teasing you. Seeing the young lady staring at him in shock, Dmo Xian couldn't help but let out a light laugh. Chapter 4909. With his other hand, he pulled her into his embrace. "Your little cousin looks a lot like you." Feng, she and Feng Li Qiong looked very similar. Feng Li Qiong and Feng Ge looked very similar. Naturally, Feng Shi and Yi Qing Luo looked very similar. If it wasn't for the fact that Feng Shi and Yi Qing Luo's age didn't match up, they really had the feeling of mother and son. Especially just now, the moment they pushed the door open. Chu Wuxian held Feng Shi in one arm as his eyes met Yi Qing Luo's. Just for a moment, it gave one a kind of the feeling of a family of three. Dmo Xian's eyes sunk slightly. He lowered his eyelids as he gazed at the person in his arms. Then he lifted Feng Shi up a little. A family of three? His kind was a family of three, all right. Dmo Xian's complicated inner thoughts. Yi Qing Luo didn't sense it. Her attention was focused on another point. The young lady lifted her head in his arms as her narrow eyes widened and stared at Dmo Xian. "You know he's my cousin? You really knew that I'm in the Feng family in the God realm, right?" Dmo Xian remained silent for a moment as he spat out a word. You're in the God realm and you know where I am. Why didn't you look for me?" Yi Qing Luo tugged his ear as she grumbled fiercely. "Do you know that the main reason why I agreed to the reunion banquet is—" "I know." The man's large palm held the young lady's fair hand. A low and gentle voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's words. I know you want to use the reunion banquet to tell me where you are. Yi Qing Luo struggled against his hand as she snorted. Since you know, why didn't you come? Not only did you not come, you're even hiding here secretly with that beautiful Miss Chingo, a lone man and a lone woman, lovey-dovey. Tell me the truth. Are you up to something behind my back? The young lady's fair fingers poked his chest fiercely. DMO Xian's unique daintiness was displayed. In front of outsiders, the young girl was ostentatious and bright, but in front of him, she was like a cunning cat, smart and cute. This made DMO Xian's eyes to be filled with a faint smile. His beautiful thin lips were frivolous, and his low and mellow voice entered her ears leisurely. Because I know that you are safe in the Feng family. Safe my ass. That little uncle of mine has set his sights on me. Yi Qing Luo didn't believe that he didn't know what had happened between her and Feng Liqiong when she was in the Feng family. Because my little Luo is very smart. The man caught her little hand that was poking around. Most importantly, I believe that little uncle of yours won't really bear to hurt you. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. How much do you know? DMO Xian smiled without saying a word. As soon as he put on this pose, he did not intend to answer her question. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered to probe further. Her little hand hooked his finger and played with it. You're indeed the Overlord. Even if you're holed up in this place, you're still very clear about foreign trade matters. No. The man laughed softly. His voice was magnetic and pleasant to the ear. Anything related to you is the most important thing to me. A passionate confession. It made Yi Qing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly. How could he break the rules like this? She didn't have time to ask for any information. She lost her ability to think after being teased by DMO Xian. A handsome man was simply toxic. Chapter 4910. Yi Qing Luo expressed that she was absolutely not a superficial woman who only knew how to look at appearances. She tried hard to adjust the expression on her face as she stared at DMO Xian with a straight face and started to make trouble out of nothing. Anyway, it's your fault that you didn't look for me at the first instance after you knew I was in the God realm. See that? She was so overbearing and domineering. She would never succumb to DMO Xian's honey trap. That little lady's demeanor fell into DMO Xian's eyes. Just like a kitten acting coquettishly, it tickled his heart. DMO Xian's eyes were filled with warmth and tenderness. His mellow voice was extremely pampering. Yes, it's my fault. There won't be a next time. Yi Qing Luo, no way. This guy was too good at flirting. Her man was too handsome. What should she do when she was charmed by his honey trap every day? The reason why I'm here actually has something to do with you. DMO Xian carried Feng, and placed her on the bed. Then he held Yi Qing Luo and walked towards the outer hall. Yi Qing Luo pushed away the hand around her waist. Cici will be afraid to stay here alone. Afraid? DMO Xian narrowed his eyes and stared at Feng Shi. Will a man be afraid? Feng Shi's little head shrank. She felt that his gaze was a little cold. Just as she was about to stretch out her hands to Yi Qing Luo, she heard the second half of the man's sentence. A man. He was a man. How could he not be a man in front of his fairy sister? Immediately he changed his words. No, I'm not afraid. Cici? Yi Qing Luo swatted away DMO Xian's hand and walked to the bed, bending over to touch his head. Don't listen to his nonsense. I'm here to accompany you. Cici is really not afraid. Feng Shi's little face was firm. Cici is a man. I'm not afraid to sleep alone. Saying that, the little girl obediently pulled the quilt over, lay down, covered herself, and closed her eyes. Her obedient look was very cute. All right. Behind her, the man's long arms scooped the young girl into his arms. We'll be in the outer hall. We'll be able to hear anything. DMO Xian did not allow for any explanation as he brought the young lady to the outer hall. Without Feng Shi, the third wheel, the atmosphere between the two of them was much more intimate. Yi Qing Luo sat on the mahogany chair as she grabbed the man's finger and played with it. Earlier you said the reason why you're in the Palace of Seclusion is because of me. What do you mean by that? The man's ink-like eyes reflected the girl's enchanting face after the disguise. That pair of familiar charming eyes seemed to be able to reflect into his heart. His eyes were filled with love. When Sheng replied, "The power of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness is too complicated. If we want to eradicate it, we have to find the mastermind. But the mastermind is too cunning. It won't be easy to catch him. That's why I've always been thinking about why the person behind the scenes of Tenebrous Palace established such a force like Tenebrous Palace. What's their purpose? You seem to be the target of the Palace of Darkness. So, I'm guessing that if we find out what exactly does the Palace of Darkness need you to achieve the goal of the Palace of Darkness, we can solve the root of the problem." Yi Qing Luo went into deep thoughts when she heard the man's words. She had always been curious about the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness, even Xian if he wanted to get rid of the other party. Just what kind of existence was that person? Perhaps the only way was to find out clearly the motive of the Palace of Darkness. Then there would be a chance to find out the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness. Chapter 49:11. Yi Qing Luo regained her senses from her deep thoughts as she glanced sideways at Diamo Xian. Her little face was still pretending to pout coquettishly. Then, "What has this got to do with you and that woman hiding here quietly?" Diamo Xian laughed lightly. "Initially, when I wanted to send the Azure Aqua threads back to you, I received news from the Imperial Palace that I've been investigating." His slender fingers gently touched the little face of the girl who was pretending to be angry. "So, I went temporarily." Yi Qing Luo grabbed his hand. "You found out the motive of the mastermind behind the secluded palace?" From what he had said before, Yi Qing Luo deduced it. Diamo Xian nodded. "Moreover, that motive is related to you." He leaned over slightly. His deep, inky pupils were fixated on Yi Qing Luo without blinking. His eyes were very solemn. Under the night sky, it shone with a cold light. The people behind the gloomy palace are looking for a place. It's said that as long as we find that place, we'll be able to obtain the treasures within Yi Qing Luo. Why did this rumor sound so fake? It felt like some kind of scam organization was spreading unhealthy thoughts here. We want to build a harmonious society, to be a prosperous, strong, democratic, civilized people. This kind of baseless rumor could not be believed, could not be believed. Diamo Xian looked at the young lady's rich expression and couldn't help but curl his thin lips. He continued, "There's still the second half." Yi Qing Luo tried to probe. "The one who gets the treasure gets the world." Diamo Xian didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to know about it. He remained silent for a moment and nodded. Yi Qing Luo. The world I'm talking about here doesn't just refer to the God realm. Diamo Xian pondered for a moment as his eyes darkened. If we were to let all the big realms in this world merge back together, the world will definitely be in chaos. Do you believe that there's such a treasure? Yi Qing Luo suddenly asked. Diamo Xian replied without any hesitation. "I don't believe you." "I don't believe it either." Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes. "There are at least 20 to 30 realms in the world, if not 10. Even if you have the ability, you don't have the life to control it. Everything in the world had a balanced law of survival. If all the realms were to be united, how should the people of the major universes, big or small, with different abilities, levels, habits, and priorities, be controlled? Eventually there would be chaos. But the mastermind behind the Nether Palace believed it. Diamo Xian's eyes deepened. Moreover, this treasure indeed exists. Exist? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. You set up this base in the palace of secluded darkness, just to investigate the location of that treasure. Dmo Xian's eyes softened even more, his eyes filled with smiles. His girl was really smart. It was only a few words. He had already guessed the gist of it. He held the young girl's fair and delicate hand. Even if this treasure can't take over the entire world, it shouldn't be a problem to take over the entire God realm. Once the mastermind behind the palace of gloomy darkness takes over the God realm, it won't be long before the destruction of the other realms. Yi Qing Luo's vision had not been focused at all, as it was fixated on their hands, which were interlocked. Looking at the intertwined fingers of the two of them, she muttered to herself for some time. When she opened her mouth again, the expression on her face had already changed into a solemn and serious one. The place which the mastermind is looking for, don't tell me, has something to do with me? Chapter 49:12. Ever since Nirvana Realm, Palace of Darkness had been finding trouble with me, trying to control me. The person behind the scenes needs me to find that place, right? In Yi Qing Luo's mind, she rearranged all the connections. Her thoughts became clearer and clearer. Palace of Darkness's mastermind's motive is it related to my mother, the Emperor of God Emperors? When this guess was set out, Dmo Xian's smile deepened. He hooked the young lady's fair fingers lightly. His voice was clear. Lil Luoer is so smart. His words indirectly admitted that everything she had guessed was true. Yi Qing Luo's long lashes drooped slightly. Her eyes were a little faint, so... What you said, the place that Palace of Darkness is looking for, is my mother's, which is also the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, right? The Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. The place where the Emperor of God Emperors had passed away. That was where the treasures were buried. Any one of them was enough to stir up the various realms. It indeed could be called as a treasure. After all, the former Emperor of God Emperor's power and whatever they had when they were alive, they were all God relics. If one were to talk about the real motive of Palace of Darkness Mastermind, it was to find the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, to obtain the Emperor of God Emperor's belongings. Everything that had happened before could be explained. No wonder. Over at Palace of Darkness, she would always be able to see that stone wall which had her mother's totem carved on it. Every time she touched those stone walls, she would always fall into the periphery of the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. This was all Palace of Darkness conspiracy. Those stone walls must be the mastermind behind Palace of Darkness. Based on the information that she knew about the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, to research a path to the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, and at the same time to test if she really had the qualification to enter the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. No wonder. When Palace of Darkness tried to deal with her several times, most of the time their motive was to control her, not to kill her. It was because only she could open the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. Actually, in other words, it was rumored that the Feng family had treasures. This sentence was not fake, because the so-called precious treasure, she was the one who knew about the divine emperor's grave and entered it. Mysterious flame. Dubhe diagram. It was a map of the divine emperor's tomb. What the mastermind of Gloomy Palace wanted was the mystic flame's Dubhe diagram. What Feng Liqiang wanted, the so-called treasure of the Feng family, was probably the Xianyan Dubhe diagram. Apart from the map, there's also the method to enter the tomb of the divine emperor. It's also extremely complicated. Even that person from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness doesn't have a clue. Dmo Xian didn't refute Yi Qing Luo's guess as he gently embraced her in his arms. But I'm guessing that the biggest key should still be you. After thinking through all these things, Yi Qing Luo's feelings were rather complicated. Her head was pressed against the man's chest, feeling the warmth from his body. His cold body and uneasy heart gradually calmed down. Did you stay in the base of the palace of gloomy shadows with Qing Gu to investigate how to enter the tomb of the divine emperor? No wonder when she peeped outside Qing Ji's room. That study room was filled with various books and scrolls of ancient books. She shut her eyes as she buried her entire body into his warm embrace. By his side, there was a sense of security which made her rely on him. Chapter 49:13. For the Palace of Darkness to kidnap Cece at this juncture, is it because the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness has found a way to enter the divine emperor's tomb? Other than me, there's also Cece. Can she replace me to enter the divine emperor's tomb? DMO Xian gently stroked her hair with his fingertips. Feng. She is a descendant of the Feng family. Whether she has the qualification to enter the divine emperor's tomb, or whether she has any secrets about the divine emperor's tomb, the people behind the scenes of the Dark Nether Palace are not sure. I think the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness is just trying. His soothing voice was gentle and mellow, which could easily soothe all the uneasiness in her heart. I will send you and Feng Shi out of here, as long as you don't leave the Feng family's territory. The Palace of Darkness will not dare to lay a hand on Feng Shi. What about you? Yi Qing Luo's little hand grabbed his collar as she raised her head slightly. Do you still want to stay here? I will look for you after I find the clues. DMO Xian patted her head. Yi Qing Luo's little hand tightened. No, I don't want to. She couldn't always hide in the safe zone. She had to let DMO Xian overcome all the obstacles for her. I'm with you, not because I want you to do anything for me, but because I want to be with you. Yi Qing Luo's voice was a little hoarse. Her long and narrow eyes were stained with a few sparkles. I said before I want to grow to stand by your side, shoulder to shoulder with you. The purpose of my coming to the upper realm is to find out my background, to know why my biological parents would abandon me. Now I have found it. The Palace of Darkness's target is me, my mother. I can't keep hiding under your wings like this. Other than me, no one can really solve this matter. Following the young lady's determined voice, the light in her eyes became brighter and brighter. It was as if his eyes were filled with a sky full of stars, unwavering. She looked at DMO Xian fixedly. Their eyes met. The young lady's eyes rippled slightly. Her pink lips curled into a brilliant smile. Ah, Xian, I want to be with you. Little Luo. DMO Xian sighed softly. His inky black eyes reflected her charming and enchanting face after her disguise. But under DMO Xian's gaze, Yi Qing Luo felt that. It was as if he could see through the disguise on her face and see the real her. I can't do anything to you. The man chuckled and hugged her even more tightly. There was a rare gentleness in his voice. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles, like a cat who had gotten her way. Her charming eyes curved. Because I was born to be your nemesis, my dear. Overlord. The man did not speak again. However, the doting look in his eyes and the gentleness in his actions represented all the answers. She would not leave his side. But how could he bear to part with her? Therefore, let's keep him by our side. Under his watch, he could be more at ease. Hence, when DMO Xian pulled Yi Qing Luo back to Qing Ji's room, Qing Ji's expression, it was extremely complicated. The expression she shot towards Yi Qing Luo was the most obvious jealousy and hatred between ladies. Meeting Qing Ji's gaze, Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled up as she smiled sweetly at Qinggo. My Xian has been troubling you for so many days. I'm really sorry. Chapter 49:14. Qing Ji's expression darkened slightly. She didn't respond to Yi Qing Luo, but turned her gaze towards DMO Xian. Overlord, are you planning to leave? Qing Ji's tone was carefully probing. She was afraid that DMO Xian would really follow Yi Qing Luo, intending to leave the secluded palace. She had yet to attract DMO Xian's attention. He hadn't gotten the respected Dizun yet. She had allowed another woman to take him away from her hands just like that. Wouldn't she lose all her face? If this matter were to spread, where was her charm as a pure pigeon? Thinking of this, the coldness in Qing Ji's eyes intensified. Not waiting for DMO Xian's reply, he had already opened his mouth. We've finally found some clues if you were to leave now. Wouldn't it be a waste of effort? Yi Qing Luo casually blocked in front of DMO Xian as her lips curled into a smile. Miss Qinga, don't worry. Xian has no intention to leave the base now. Then, Qinga finally shifted her gaze towards Yi Qing Luo. What did you mean by what you said earlier? Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. Her long and narrow eyes were like a rose in full bloom, enchanting elegance. What I said is right. Previously it was Maya Xian who had troubled you for several days from today onwards. Both of us will have to trouble you, Miss Qinga. As if she could not see Qing Ji's increasingly gloomy face, she continued to smile sweetly. I believe, Miss Qinga, you will not reject me, right? Qing Ji's face darkened and she clenched her fists. You want to stay here too? Well, a woman. Wherever Xian is, I will naturally be there. Yi Qing Luo replied with a smile. You two aren't married yet, right? Qing Ji's breath caught in her throat. Looking at the intimate posture of the two, she clenched her fists so hard that her fingertips turned white. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she giggled. As long as I want to, I can even get married now. Qing Ji's gaze was filled with complex emotions as she looked deeply at DMO Xian, as though he was anticipating DMO Xian to say a rebuttal. However, the man didn't even glance at her from the corner of his eyes. His vision fell onto Yi Qing Luo's figure without blinking, as though in his eyes, other than Yi Qing Luo, he couldn't see anyone else. Qing Ji's breathing quickened. There were a few times when he wanted to open his mouth and tear apart the girl's provocative and bright smile that was filled with mockery. But in the end, she suppressed the impulse in her heart. Her delicate eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Her gentle and elegant face revealed her noble majesty. She pursed her lips and said in a deep voice, Miss Feng, it's not that I don't want to take you in, but this is the territory of the Palace of Darkness after all. She purposely emphasized the word taken and smiled coldly. The Overlord is staying here because I believe in your strength. Even if his lordship notices your existence, the Overlord can still leave the base of the Palace of Darkness quietly. But, Miss Feng, I don't think you can do it. Her judgmental gaze sized up Yi Qing Luo from head to toe. His eyes were filled with mockery and disdain. Miss Feng, as Lord Dizun's woman, you should learn how to share Lord Dizun's burden. You shouldn't recklessly create trouble for Lord Dizun just because Lord Dizun loves you. Qing Ji's every word was belittling Yi Qing Luo. In Qing Ji's eyes, Yi Qing Luo was merely a cultivator with low ability. Chapter 49:15. The only one that was presentable could only be the identity of Feng family's Mississippi. The most important thing was Feng Qing Luo, this Feng family's miss, was not legitimate. She was merely the Feng family's adopted daughter on a whim. If she were to appear, presumably, the Feng family would not offend her just for this adopted daughter. Qing Gu thought in this way as the disdain in her eyes deepened. Facing Qing Ji's sarcasm, Yi Qing Luo's expression had not changed at all. Her eyes were still curved, as the ends of her eyelids arched upwards, curling into a glistening expression. That enchanting face was as exquisite as a blooming rose, blooming with the most dazzling elegance. Regarding this point, Miss Qing Gu need not worry. Yi Qing Luo's voice was clear and melodious, like pearls falling on a plate, extremely pleasant to the ears. I can't, Xian can. He will protect me. As Xian's woman, actually it's not as complicated as what Miss Qing thought. As for me, As long as I stay by Ah Xian's side, enjoying his pampering, that's enough. Yi Qing Luo hugged Dmo Xian's arm, leaning her head towards him, smiling sweetly. Women should be pampered, doted on, loved. But for someone like Miss Qing, at such an age, still alone, you should not understand this feeling. Qing Ji's expression, before Yi Qing Luo's words finished, seemed to be covered by dark clouds. The anger in her eyes was like a blazing fire. Her exquisite and elegant face uncontrollably twisted slightly. Qingge, Dmo Xian opened his mouth indifferently as he shot a glance at Qingge. If it's not convenient, I will return to the Feng family with little Luo first. I'll have to trouble you to send the ancient books here to the Feng family. The moment the man opened his mouth, he had completely stated his stand. Qingge was an intelligent person. How could she not hear the warning in Dmo Xian's tone? If it was any other time, Dmo Xian didn't even want to say a word more to her. These few days in Dmo Xian's base, the words he said probably did not exceed 10 sentences. But today, the words he said exceeded the sum of all the words he said these few days. However, all of this was for the sake of that girl. A complicated light flickered in Qing Ji's eyes. From the bottom of her heart, the thought of obtaining Dmo Xian seemed to have taken root and sprouted, twining around her body and mind. The more he behaved this way, the more she wanted him. Such a perfect and outstanding man. It should belong to her. How could that Miss Feng of the Feng family compare with her? You want to stay here? That's great. Let Feng Qing Luo witness with her own eyes how her man, little by little, sank into her land of gentleness. When Qingge looked up again, her expression was once again elegant and gentle. Her cherry lips curled up, and her beautiful eyes focused. My lord won't be here today, so it's not inconvenient. Since the Overlord has no objections, I naturally have no objections. She looked at Yi Qing Luo. Miss Feng, then please stay here and stay well. Thank you, Miss Qingge. Yi Qing Luo's smile did not diminish. Following that, she raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian, displaying her lovable charm to the extreme. Ah Xian, which room are you staying in? Bring me there to rest. Saying that, both her hands hooked onto the man's neck, and with a leap, she jumped into his arms. The man naturally wrapped his arms around her waist to prevent her from falling. The action between the two of them seemed as though they had rehearsed it countless of times. It had already formed into their exclusive tacit understanding. Chapter 49:16. This one action fell into Qing Ji's eyes. This made the jealousy in her heart burn even more, as her brows overflowed with uncontrollable jealousy and hatred, until she saw Dmo Xian condescending himself, as though he was carrying a precious treasure, carrying her as he turned around and left the study. Her jade-like fingers clenched tightly as the smile on her face slowly turned cold. She slammed the table heavily. The table full of books and paintings were scattered all over the floor. That damned Feng Qing Luo. She must have provoked her on purpose, intentionally being so intimate with the Overlord. He had purposely shown her how much the Overlord doted on her and how much he loved her, trying to use this method to make her give up. Impossible. Princess. A black shadow suddenly appeared out of thin air and knelt down respectfully in front of Qingge. Do you need me to share Princess's worries? No need. Qing Ji's eyes were gloomy. Her elegant face revealed a trace of noble arrogance. It's just a man. There's no need for you to do anything. She raised her delicate eyebrows, slightly raised her chin, and arrogantly said, The Overlord is a prey that I have my eyes on. Towards prey. I prefer to tame them myself. You better hurry up and find out the secret of the Palace of Darkness as soon as possible. My lord is too sensitive. The longer time passes, the easier it is for your existence to be discovered. Qing Ji's eyes sunk like a deep pool, as deep as the sea. By then there's a high possibility that I will be suspected by my lord. Yes, the black shadow's tone was solemn. After spitting out a word, respectfully, the figure disappeared into thin air as soon as it appeared. The room fell into a dead silence once again, as if everything that happened earlier was just an illusion. Mo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo all the way to the room next door. Pushing the door open, the room was filled with the unique sandalwood scent from Mo Xian's body. Yi Qing Luo circled Mo Xian's neck, raised her brows, and looked at him. Looks like that Miss Qingge treats you quite well. The room she arranged for you is in line with your style. Mo Xian put her down, still jealous? Jealous? Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly. Is she worthy? Could a rival in love that posed no threat at all be considered a rival in love? At most, she was just a die-hard fan of Mo Xian. You're not jealous? Why do you look so pale? Mo Xian's slender, jade-like fingers pinched her face as he gave a low chuckle. It's all right to admit that you're jealous. I like to see you being jealous because of me. He took the girl's hand and held it tightly. I like to see you blocking my way, blocking other people's covetous eyes. I like to see you like a female warrior, declaring your sovereignty. I like seeing you care about me. The man's gentle and mellow voice was like fine wine, seeping into her eardrums and flowing into her heart. Yi Qing Luo felt slightly tipsy. Her cheeks were flushed and her heart was beating rapidly. She felt as if she was floating on air. This man, she began to speak words of love. It was really a little hard to control. When did he become so good at flirting? The girl's eyes were filled with shyness. The man moved closer. Why aren't you saying anything? Yi Qing Luo lowered her head and raised her hand to block that peerless handsome face that she couldn't control and pressed it back. Yes, I'm jealous, all right? Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:17. Her outstretched hand. She was held by the man's large palm. Beside her ear was his deep, husky, and mellow laughter. It made Yi Qing Luo's heart itch. She pushed him away and jumped onto the bed. Leaning against the headboard, she hugged her knees and glared at him. In times of crisis, we need to build a harmonious socialism. Prosperity, democracy, literacy, harmony, freedom. Stop flirting with me. Socialist core values. Do not allow it. Mo Xian. There was a faint melancholy that he didn't know where to start from. Yi Qing Luo put on a serious face. That Qingge, can you really trust her? Mo Xian sat down beside her. There's no need to believe me. I just need her position in the palace of Nether Gloom to make it easier for me to move around. I think there's something about her that makes me feel very uncomfortable. Yi Qing Luo shifted her body over and leaned on him. It's better to be careful. If your honey trap fails and she bites back, we'll be in deep trouble. Mo Xian's thin lips curled up frivolously as he glanced sideways at her and pinched her little face. My little Luo is really getting more and more powerful. Yi Qing Luo grabbed his hand. You've long sensed it? Yes. Mo Xian held her little hand and pinched it in his palm. Her motive should be the same as the person behind the Nether Palace. We don't have to interfere. Sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as her pink lips curled into a teasing smile. Are we going to sit back and reap the benefits? Mo Xian's fingers, which were pinching her little hand, paused as he looked at her solemnly. You can sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, but don't think of reaping the benefits of the fishermen. You don't have to care about the dispute between the two forces. Yi Qing Luo didn't ask why as her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Then what about you? Dmo Xian froze for a moment and pulled her into his arms. Don't worry about me, I won't do things that I'm not sure of. That is to say, you will participate in their dispute. Yi Qing Luo's head leaned against his chest. Her voice didn't reveal much emotion. Dmo Xian's arms tightened because I have no choice but to interfere. She could hear the hoarseness and nervousness in the man's voice. She reached out and circled his waist. She pressed her face against his chest. He listened to the heartbeat in his ears. She sighed softly and said, "But do you think this is something that I cannot participate in just because I don't want to?" Dmo Xian was silent. Yi Qing Luo's little head arched slightly. Ah, Xian, if their motive is all for the God Emperor's tomb, then there's absolutely no lack of me. As my mother's daughter, this is my unavoidable fate. Ah, Xian, I know you will definitely protect me, so I'm not worried at all. The man's low sigh floated down from above. The two of them hugged each other and did not speak again. The next day, calculating the time, it should be morning. The base of the Palace of Darkness was still dark. Outside the door, a large red lantern flickered and emitted an extremely faint light. Under the darkness, a ray of light approached from afar and stopped at the door of the room. An elegant and pleasant voice came from the door. "Lord Dizun, can you get up now? I asked the kitchen to prepare some of your favorite breakfast dishes." Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes rose as she looked at Dmo Xian without blinking. The young lady's death stare made Dmo Xian's body stiffen. Just as he was about to reject her, the young lady's soft voice rang first. "Miss Qinggu has the heart. Then I'll have to trouble Miss Qinggu to send the breakfast in." "Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love for everyone to collect." "Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love for me." Chapter 49:18. The person outside the door was stunned for a moment. The atmosphere in the air seemed to have turned much colder. Yi Qing Luo naturally felt the change in the air as her pink lips curled into a teasing arc. After some time, the room door was pushed open. Qinggu was dressed in a white muslin long dress as she walked into the room with a fairy aura. That white lotus arm was carrying an exquisite and fragrant breakfast as she walked in leisurely. Her posture was elegant and her smile was just right. But the moment she stepped into the room, Qingji's smile froze on her face. She almost couldn't hold on to the tray she was carrying. Her face turned slightly pale as she looked at the scene in front of her in shock. The young lady dressed in red was hugging a 5 to 6-year-old boy with bright eyes and white teeth. She sat on the red sandalwood chair as her fair fingers pinched Xiao Tuanzi's face from time to time, while Dmo Xian, who was dressed in a black robe, stood behind the young lady. His slender fingers rested lightly on the back of the chair. His eyes drooped slightly as his deep black eyes gazed tenderly at the young lady. Golden boy and jade girl, a perfect match. It was a déjà vu feeling of a family of 3. This warm picture of a family. It was like a thorn, piercing into Qingji's eyes. The expression on her face was overcast, dark and gloomy. "Miss Qinggu, what's the matter?" Yi Qing Luo's slender eyes raised as she looked at Qinggu with a smile. That bright-eyed Xiao Tuanzi and the young lady looked over at the same time. Two similar faces reflected in Qingji's eyes. Qingji's pupils constricted. This is yours." Feng Qing Luo actually had the Overlord's child? How could this be possible? Look at this child's age. This meant that Feng Qing Luo and the Overlord had known each other for at least 5 to 6 years. Yi Qing Luo lowered her head to look at Xiao Tuanzi in her arms as she slowly stood up and fought alongside Dmo Xian. Her fingertips brushed against Xiao Tuanzi's face as she asked with a smile, "My Sisi looks adorable, right?" The man cooperated as he circled his arm around the young lady's shoulder. It was also an indirect acknowledgement that they were a family of 3. Qinggu held her breath and stiffened. She placed the tray on the mahogany table and smiled in disbelief. This child looks very much like Miss Fong. Of course. After all, he was her little uncle's biological son. After all, he looked very similar to her mother. But when Chingu heard this, she was stunned. It was a disguised admission. She and this little ball were indeed mother and son, because only a mother and a son would look alike. You guys eat slowly. I still have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. After saying this, Chingu turned around and left the room with a stiff body. Yi Qing Luo placed the little dumpling on the chair and placed the breakfast in front of him while raising her eyes to look at Dmo Xian. Did she misunderstand something? Let her be. Dmo Xian didn't really care. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian along and sat down by the side. Dmo Xian looked at the gentle and attentive young lady taking care of Feng, she as she ate, which made him think, if in the future Lil Luo also had a child that belonged to the two of them, Lil Luo would definitely be a very good mother. Child end of this chapter. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle.